Chapter 459. It's time for this show to end. Liu released a ray of light and lifted the restriction on the Green Lotus avatar. He reached out to hold Yin Luo's hand and stepped into the center of the net. With a flash of light, they appeared in the world inside the net. Kill, roar, AO, angry roars rang out. Streaks of spiritual light tore through the air, and rumbling spells were cast one after another. The entire net world was filled with sword light and sword shadows. The wind whistled as they fought fiercely. Under the attack of Liu's various worlds' legions, the net puppets were defeated and retreated. Not bad. Liu was very satisfied with the combat strength of the various worlds' legions when he saw the situation inside the world. Although the souls of these puppets are extinguished, their bodies are still alive. They're still useful. I can't waste them like this. What's more, they're all my people. Liu gave an order to the net artifact spirit, instructing the net puppets to assemble. Then, Liu directly reached out and pressed down on the place where the puppets were gathered. Boom! Black and white intertwined rays of light blotted out the sky and swept through like a wave. All the net puppets in the sky were suddenly swept away by this ray of light. The power of this Tai Chi heavenly prison spell is already very good. With Liu's current cultivation, the power of the Tai Chi heavenly prison spell, driven by the Yin and Yang Chi, was extremely terrifying. A black and white light spot fell into Liu's hand. This inch-large black and white crystal had tens of thousands of net puppets sealed inside. Not bad. The puppets that have not been destroyed until now are all extraordinary existences. With a wave of his hand, he put the sealed crystal into the resource warehouse. Liu stood in the void and released his own chi. The Tai Chi Yin and Yang fish hung high in the sky like a scorching sun, illuminating heaven and earth. My soldiers, all living beings of this world, the war of the heavens, we have won, Liu announced loudly, and his mighty voice spread throughout the world. Long live his majesty! Long live his majesty! Long live his majesty! Hearing Liu's words, the legions gathered from various worlds immediately cheered loudly. Victory! We won! Ancestors, we have won! The four monster emperors of the net world and the group of monsters wept tears of joy as they roared into the sky. Although the humans were also cheering, they seemed to have a lot on their minds. Although everyone had seen the true face of the net. However, the human race no longer had the energy of the heavenly Tao, so how would they survive in the future? At this time, when the heavens were about to collapse, the rookies who stood out bravely to turn the tide and protect their sex stood out. They represented the interests of their race and participated in the assembly to establish order after the war. All right, this was all a bluff. Wasn't the so-called post-war order exactly what Liu meant? My soldiers, all of you have contributed greatly to this great victory. Every army will be rewarded. Thank you for your grace, your majesty. Thus, Liu rewarded the three armies. The ancient tree obtained the heavenly wood technique and the human immortal martial path. The heaven demon phoenix race, the dragon race, and the 9 abyss python that he brought with him all obtained the nirvana technique and the true dragon transformation technique that Liu had created. The monkey, the qilin, the little white dragon Ao1, the green fox, and the Jiugao race all obtained the corresponding great Tao of the 5 elements. Baohua's demon race, Ao Jin's dragon race, and the ancient ancestors' ancient race. Liu also imparted the great Tao of the 5 elements and the human immortal martial path. Also brought back was a permanent fortification, talisman, that Liu had used to strengthen the stronghold of them all. Long live his majesty, we will take our leave. As the 3 armies thanked him, Liu opened the teleportation gate and sent the armies of the various worlds back. Now, we have to deal with the problem of the net world. There is still a problem in the net world. The sword light and the net had fought for countless years, and the destructive power swept through the void. Although these destructive storms were all vented to the outside world by the net. However, the outside world was filled with endless destructive storms. Once the net was removed, this net world, this south parting island, would probably cease to exist. Everyone, this is the true face of the world. Liu brought the representatives of the human race and the demon race to the outside world through the crack in the net and pointed to the earth-shattering destructive storms. Everyone who saw this scene was so scared that their faces turned pale. Thus, a consensus was quickly reached. The net could not be removed. Without the protection of the net, this south-parting island would be destroyed in the blink of an eye. Of course, this was all superficial. The four demon emperors listened to Liu. The new rising stars of the human race were all hosts of the heavenly projecting orb. Everything was under Liu's control. The origin world has only uncovered the tip of the iceberg. There is still a vast, unknown world waiting to be discovered. Therefore, as my base in the origin world, South Parting Island is worth investing in. After sending away the representatives of the human and demon races, Liu began to transform South Parting Island. First, the net. This thing can't be removed for the time being. Moreover, to protect South Parting Island, the net must be strengthened. Liu naturally had a way to strengthen the net. Nether Beast has the ability to swallow the world, accelerate time, and transform into nothingness. Moreover, All-Seer's source is still in my hands. I can use it to transform the net. Liu took a step forward and once again arrived at the main hall where the center of the trap was located. Greetings, Lord. The net's artifact spirit dressed in an emperor's robe prostrated in front of Liu. The artifact spirit's appearance is really dazzling. Dressed like an emperor, he looked very uncomfortable. Liu waved his hand and directly collected the artifact spirit into the resource warehouse. System: use All-Seer's source and the Nether Beast to reconstruct the net's artifact spirit. As for the outer appearance, Liu suddenly remembered that he had evaluated true Lord Tian Luo as a spider spirit and immediately had an idea. Let's use a crystal spider for the outer appearance. Spider and net, aren't they quite compatible? Liu was very satisfied with his own creativity. In a moment, a palm-sized crystal-clear spider that looked like it was carved out of crystal fell into Liu's hand. Not bad. This is what an artifact spirit should look like. Liu smiled and waved his hand to send the crystal spider into the center of the net. Buzz! A slight tremor sounded, and the huge net that shrouded South Parting Island immediately resonated. An invisible stream of light rippled out like water ripples, and the net that shrouded heaven and earth disappeared as if it had melted in water. This was nothingness. Not bad. Liu nodded his head in satisfaction. With the Nether Beast's ability and All-Seer's source, after the crystal spider entered the net, the power of the entire net became stronger, and it also had the Nether Beast's ability. This net still needs to be refined again. Liu walked to the front of the throne in the main hall and sat down on the throne with his hand on the armrest. Boom! The Taiji scene appeared, and a majestic and vast power like the overturning of the Milky Way rushed into the net. Under this power, all traces of true Lord Tenluo were annihilated, and the rules and order of the net were reconstructed with Liu's own great Tao. The weakness of the turbulent void cannot exist anymore. Liu reached out and pressed his hand on the throne's armrest, and the Xianhuang Qi flowed along the net's threads and fiercely brushed through the cracks. The Xianhuang Qi swept through and annihilated the remaining heaven-splitting sword Qi in the cracks. The broken threads were reconnected one by one. Rumble. The void trembled, and the turbulent void that had existed for countless years slowly closed under the shocked gaze of all living beings. The crack in the sky no longer existed. The net world and South Parting Island were also firmly in Liu's hands. What is the name of this place? Liu stepped out of the main hall, and the Xianhuang Qi was released, and all the buildings that were destroyed in the previous battle were rebuilt one by one. Since it's a crystal spider, then this place will be called the Coiling Silk Cave. Chapter 460, Canwu Mountain, Wangchuan Peak. After refining the net, Liu returned to the peak of the mountain. The strength of the net world must be improved. Liu and the Green Lotus doppelganger sat opposite each other. Liu took a sip of tea and said to the Green Lotus doppelganger, I plan to promote the cultivation of qi. It's not just their strength that needs to be improved. The Green Lotus doppelganger was unhappy. My strength needs to be improved too. Of course. Liu smiled and nodded. The Green Lotus doppelganger had been cheated badly this time. He had always had a smooth journey. When had he ever suffered such a big loss? The Green Lotus doppelganger was Liu. His spirit was one, and there was no difference. With Liu's character, how could he take this lying down? The situation of the net world is already under control. There's no need for you to continue holding the fort. How about this? You go to the other world for a while. You'll be able to improve your strength very quickly. That's what I was thinking. The Green Lotus doppelganger nodded and left. By the way, bring little Ting with you. She has been too lazy all these years. With the potential of an empress, she will be spoiled sooner or later if she lives like a princess. Bring her out to fight and train her. Okay. The Green Lotus doppelganger stepped out and came to the mall space. Then, it brought little Ting and stepped onto the interplanar teleportation array to start the path of fighting. As for which world the Green Lotus doppelganger and little Ting planned to wreak havoc, Liu was too lazy to care. Cultivation techniques need to be spread. More importantly, the problem of Yin Luo and Master also needs to be dealt with. Liu walked out of the Wangchuan Peak and returned to the chores yard. Brother, you're here. Yin Luo sat in Yin Calming's study, frowning and drooping her head. Brother, where did father go? Why isn't he back yet? The situation in the world is unclear now, and Master has a lot of things to do. This is inevitable. Liu couldn't tell her the truth. He couldn't say that her father was almost killed by her. Oh, that's right. Yin Luo, you were captured by the trapped net puppet last time, so your divine soul is still somewhat damaged. I'm here to treat you. Liu's words were not nonsense. Tian Luo's reincarnation consciousness had always been in Yin Luo's divine soul. Liu had destroyed Tian Luo's consciousness, so it would affect Yin Luo more or less. More importantly, there were still billions of unawakened consciousnesses of true Lord Tian Luo in the Central Plains. Liu naturally had to get rid of these future troubles. Oh, many thanks, brother Yu. Yin Luo flashed a smile at Liu. However, her expression was still somewhat gloomy. He seemed to be worried about Steward Yin. Don't worry. Master will be back soon. Liu comforted her. Then he extended his finger and pointed it between Yin Luo's eyebrows. Then, Yin Luo fell into a deep sleep with a slight stroke of his spiritual power. Souls of the same origin, reincarnation as one. Soul summoning technique. With the remnant aura of true Lord Tianluo's divine soul and Yin Luo's divine soul as a guide, Liu directly summoned all the scattered reincarnated souls of true Lord Tianluo. Buzz, a trembling sound came from the void. Countless specks of light rushed out from the entire Central Plains human realm like fireflies and swarmed toward Kangwu Mountain. Collect. Liu opened the resource vault and swept away all the specks of light. System, extract all the memories of Tian Luo's divine soul and record them into the resource vault. Then, break down Tian Luo's divine soul and turn it into pure spiritual power. In the resource vault, with a sweep of the multicolored light, the billions of divine souls of true Lord Tian Luo were completely cleansed and turned into pure spiritual power. The existence called true Lord Tian Luo had completely disappeared. The hidden danger of true Lord Tian Luo has been eliminated. Liu smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at Yin Luo, who had fallen into a deep sleep. Back then, I owed you a lot of favors. This time, I can repay you. With a wave of his hand, Liu put the sleeping Yin Luo into the resource vault. System, extract the bloodline of the immortal ancestor and integrate it into Yin Luo's body. Extract the spiritual power of true Lord Tianluo's divine soul and integrate it into Yin Luo's divine soul. True Lord Tian Luo said that Yin Luo's aptitude was ordinary, and it was indeed true. However, for something like aptitude, wasn't it something that Liu could have as much as he wanted? With the immortal body and the essence of true Lord Tianluo's divine soul, Yin Luo's aptitude is already strong enough to defy the heavens. Liu smiled. Then he released Yin Luo, who had fallen into a deep slumber. Young girl, have a good sleep. When you wake up, everything will be beautiful. Even in another world, Liu could change the fate of others and make that world free of sorrow and pain. Of course, he couldn't let any misfortune befall the people around him. I will protect your smile. Who said that? Liu smiled and shook his head before walking out of the study. Master, your life can be said to be bumpy and incomparably miserable. Liu glanced at the sleeping Yin Kongming in the resource warehouse and sighed while shaking his head. After taking Yin Kongming into the resource warehouse, Liu also collected a part of Yin Kongming's memory. From this memory, Liu knew everything. Yin Kongming was the chess piece chosen by true Lord Tianluo. After the spiritual power of true Lord Tianluo dissipated, it integrated into Yin Kongming's body and became an existence similar to a personal grandfather. After being tampered with by true Lord Tianluo, Yin Kongming couldn't resist at all and could only act according to true Lord Tianluo's instructions. Fortunately, true Lord Tianluo's personal grandfather couldn't compare to Li Yu's personal grandfather and couldn't control the host's thoughts. According to true Lord Tianluo's request, Yin Kongming founded the heaven-splitting swordsmanship sect and gathered all races to attack the heavens. At that time, true Lord Tianluo hadn't reincarnated yet. The person who controlled the net was in existence at the level of a mortal immortal. Attacking the heavens was simply courting death. Even if true Lord Tianluo cooperated with true Lord Tianluo, it didn't cause much damage. Seeing that the heavens were about to fail, Yin Kongming thought of a countermeasure. A countermeasure to kill both true Lord Tianluo and true Lord Tianluo. Thus, he persuaded his junior brother, who was the cultivator who left behind the heaven-splitting sword art in the heavenly Scar Mountain. The entire human race surrendered to true Lord Tianluo and turned against the demon race. Yin Kongming came up with a great plan of nurturing is better than plundering, and promoted the cultivation method of nurturing true Lord Tianluo. Although Yin Kongming fell into the control of true Lord Tianluo, the results of his plan were unexpectedly good. The human nurturing plan succeeded, and true Lord Tianluo obtained unexpected benefits. Then, true Lord Tianluo courted death. If nurturing others has such great benefits, wouldn't it be better if I reincarnated and understood the great Tao myself? Thus, true Lord Tianluo split into billions of spiritual powers and reincarnated among the human race. Yin Kongming's plan was still in progress until Green Lotus attained Tao. He found Green Lotus, who was the best candidate to kill true Lord Tianluo and true Lord Tianluo. 100 tribulations and 1,000 tribulations without regret. Master, you've been scheming for a long time. If I hadn't ruined your plan, you might have really succeeded. Li Yu sighed and waved his hand, releasing Yin Kongming. Master, it's all over. Li Yu flicked his finger, and a bit of the divine spring water entered Yin Kongming's body. Yin Kongming slowly woke up. I'm not dead yet. Yin Kongming opened his eyes and saw Li Yu. He saw the familiar chores yard, and a smile appeared on his face. Since I'm not dead and I can return here, then you've won. True Lord Tianluo is dead. True Lord Tianluo is also dead. Li Yu smiled and nodded. He pointed at the study room that was still lit. Furthermore, Yin Luo is still waiting for you to come home. Yin Luo? Yin Kongming was stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed in pleasant surprise. Ha! Good. You're stronger than me. You've done better than me. That's really great. Yin Kongming tidied his clothes and walked towards the study room. Luo, father is back. Father is back. Yin Luo, who was in a deep sleep, suddenly woke up and ran out of the study room cheering. Chapter 461. Yin Luo and Master's ending is perfect. Li Yu did not disturb the reunion of the father and daughter and left quietly. For Yin Kongming, the moment he saw the heavenly king awakening in his daughter's body, his heart had already died. However, under the control of the heavenly king, he could not even commit suicide. How sorrowful and desperate was that? Fortunately, everything was perfect, and no one had any regrets. So it's time to preach the Tao. On the morning of the first day, a Tai Chi Yin Yang fish rose from Kangwu Mountain. The mighty radiance illuminated the entire world. Even the light of the morning sun was overshadowed by this Tai Chi. My name is you. Today, I preach the Tao to the world. The Tai Chi circulated like the scorching sun in the sky. The five-colored brilliance circulated and condensed into a huge five-colored lotus throne in the air. A young man in white robes and a golden crown sat cross-legged on the five-colored lotus throne. His mighty voice shook the world. I have the Tao called the five elements. Attract it into the body, establish the Tao foundation, condense the Qi into the core, break the core, and give birth to the nascent soul. Transform the nascent soul into the spirit, refine the spirit into the void, combine the primordial spirit, achieve great success, and ascend. There are 5 methods. Absorb the Qi of heaven and earth, transform it into the dark water of the north, and form the Tianshui Yuan. This is the northern dark water scripture. A black light rushed out from the five-colored lotus throne and turned into a torrential Tianshui curtain. It was vast and mighty like the ocean. A scripture named Northern Dark Water Scripture appeared in the vast ocean. The words hung high in the sky and shone brightly. This is Preach the Tao. Emperor Yu is preaching the Tao. Quick, record it down. After the War of the Heavens, Li Yu's name as Emperor Yu spread throughout the world. Everyone knew that Li Yu was the strongest existence in this world. Hearing the voice and seeing the scene, and then seeing the scripture in the sky, everyone was so shocked that they jumped up. They quickly focused their attention and recorded it down. Eastern Greenwood, Heavenly Wood Scripture. A green light soared into the sky, turning into a giant tree that reached the heavens and the earth. Words flowed on the giant tree. Nanmingly Fire, True Burning Fire Scripture. Torrential flames surged into the sky, and words danced in the flames. The Great White Essence Qi is the Great White Essence Qi Scripture. An incomparably sharp white light gave off a cold, sharp golden aura, and many words that looked like swords flashed out. The central thick earth is the Thick Earth Origin Sutra. The thick yellow light was like the heavy earth, carrying all living things, incomparably heavy. Thick characters condensed in the yellow light. This is the great Tao of the 5 elements. No restrictions on humans or demons. All living beings can practice it. Manifesting the true mantra of the 5 elements. Li Yu explained the Qi refinement Tao, from drawing Qi into the body to ascending to the Mahayana realm. Thank you, Your Majesty. After receiving Li Yu's teachings, everyone in the world cried out in gratitude and kowtowed in the direction where Li Yu had appeared. This is a genuine Tao imparting. I didn't do anything underhanded. Li Yu retracted the phenomenon in the sky and returned to Kangwu Mountain in a flash. Because of Li Yu's existence, Kangwu Mountain had vaguely become the sacred ground of this world. After the initial shock, the people of Kangwu Mountain were wild with joy at Li Yu's existence. With such a peerless paragon, Kangwu Mountain was bound to become extremely powerful. Since the people of Kangwu Mountain had such a wish, Li Yu naturally went with the flow. Displaying his unparalleled divine might, he constructed many miraculous buildings in Kangwu Mountain. Ancestral Hall, Elixir Hall, Artifact Refining Pavilion, Herb Field, Martial Arts Practice Field. Li Yu then rebuilt the things he had made in the Hengyu sect in Kangwu Mountain. With these divine objects, the people of Kangwu Mountain were filled with gratitude and reverence toward Li Yu. With the protection of the net, South Parting Island will grow stronger as long as it develops peacefully. Even in this unknown origin world, it will have a foothold. Li Yu is very satisfied with the current development. Now it's time to deal with the spoils of war. Li Yu had obtained a great victory in the War of the Heavens, so his gains were bountiful. Apart from the net, the biggest gains are the Sky Splitter and Lord Sky Splitter. Li Yu looked at the resource vault and smiled when he saw the Sky Splitter and Lord Sky Splitter's soul. The Sky Splitter is a true immortal weapon. Although Lord Sky Splitter did not refine an artifact spirit in it, I can still give it one. The inescapable net and the Sky Splitter were true immortal weapons. They were worldly immortal level treasures, a level higher than Emperor weapons. Although Liu had seen countless treasures, the only ones that were truly immortal weapons were the Bronze Immortal Palace, the Invisible Immortal Fire, and the Sky Splitter and the Inescapable Net. The Bronze Immortal Palace has been built into the Merchant City. The 3 chi of the Bronze Immortal Palace have also been integrated into the Merchant City. The Invisible Immortal Fire has been lit. Although I can use it, it's not a personal item. Liu took out the Sky Splitter and flicked the blade. He was very satisfied with this 4-foot-long sword that looked like a Han sword. This thing will be my personal sword. Although Liu was not a sword cultivator and did not have much need for an immortal sword, with a battle saint technique, it was not impossible for him to pretend to be a sword cultivator. I'll use it as a front for now. With Liu's cultivation, the only treasures that were suitable for him were the Tai Chi diagram and the Xian Huang Pagoda of Heaven and Earth. However, both of these items already had owners. Even if Liu had pretended to be the Grand Supreme, he would not dare to have any ideas about those 2 treasures. Isn't Lord Sky Splitter a ready-made sword spirit? With Lord Sky Splitter driving this sword, I don't have to do anything. Liu smiled. System, erase the memory of Lord Sky Splitter's soul and reconstruct his soul in the form of a weapon spirit. With a roll of colorful light, Lord Sky Splitter's soul collapsed and was reconstructed in the form of a weapon spirit of the Sky Splitter. In a moment, a sharp sword radiance appeared in the resource warehouse. This sword radiance was exactly the same as the Sky Splitter. It was completely the shadow of the Sky Splitter. Not bad. Liu reached out and took out the sword spirit. He pressed it against the Sky Splitter in his hand. The sword spirit integrated into the Sky Splitter instantly. Clang! A sword cries soared into the sky. The Sky Splitter sword whizzed into the sky like a swimming dragon. It meandered in the sky, full of spirituality. Good. With this sword in hand, I'll be able to pretend to be a sword immortal in the future, capable of beheading someone from 1,000 miles away with a single sword strike. With a wave of his hand, the Sky Splitter fell into Liu's hand. The blade hummed and vibrated, as if it was cheering. I also need a scabbard. This Sky Splitter also had a scabbard when it was in the hands of Lord Sky Splitter. However, after the battle between Lord Sky Splitter and Lord Tianluo, even his immortal body was destroyed. The other things were also long gone. System, use red refined copper and the skin of the crocodile ancestor as raw materials to refine the scabbard of the Sky Splitter. Under the colorful light, a simple dark golden scabbard with copper patterns appeared in the resource warehouse. These are all complete. Taking off the crocodile ancestor's sword that was originally hanging on his waist and throwing it back into the resource warehouse, Liu hung the new sword on his waist. A gentleman wears a sword to show his virtue. Liu stood with his hand on the sword, his head held high and his chest puffed out. He felt more wise and powerful. Chapter 462. There are still the 5 divine spirits to deal with. Keeping the Sky Splitter, Liu looked at the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and Shilin in the resource warehouse with a smile. The 5 divine spirits have caused quite a commotion. Let's deal with them in the mall space. Liu stepped out and arrived at the mall space in an instant. At this moment, the people in the mall space had already returned to the space. There are no casualties. Not bad. After the people in the mall space fought, there were no casualties. During this period of time, the unlimited supply of dragon tooth spiritual rice had significantly improved the strength of the people in the mall space. Liu was very satisfied with this. Without alerting others, Liu returned to the main hall of the Immortal Mansion and began to deal with the resurrection of the 5 divine spirits. The 5 divine spirits have been true Lord Tianluo's puppets for many years. Their divine spirits have long been destroyed, but their bodies are still alive. It will be very easy to resurrect them. Once the 5 divine spirits were resurrected, Liu would have 5 more great Emperor-level fighters under his command. With Liu's strength, Even the Green Lotus Avatar had to work with the Green Lotus Emperor weapon to be comparable to a great emperor. Phoenix Colorful Robe and Xieling, who reincarnated with the 5-colored peacock bloodline, were only at the Great Sage to Boundary Emperor level. Once the 5 divine spirits were resurrected, they would be Li Yu's strongest force. System: use True Lord Tianluo's divine spirit to reconstruct the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits. With True Lord Tianluo's divine spirit, even if it was divided into 5 parts, it would be enough to reconstruct the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits. However, this matter was a little ironic. Back then, Tianluo had destroyed the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits and turned them into puppets. Now, Liu was using Tianluo's divine spirit to reconstruct the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits. Sure enough, there was reincarnation and retribution. In a moment, the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits were reconstructed and 5 divine beast spirits appeared in the resource warehouse. It's time to resurrect the 5 divine spirits. Waving his hand, the divine spirits of the 5 divine spirits appeared in the hall. Green dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and Shilin. Once the 5 huge divine beasts were released, they emitted an incomparably huge aura. At this moment, the Blue Lotus Avatar isn't here. The 5 sacred spirits are suitable to protect South Parting Island for me. Liu walked to the front of the 5 Direction Saint spirits and pointed a finger at the Azure Dragon. Soul, enter the body. Resurrect the Azure Dragon. A dragon's soul rushed out from the tip of his finger and merged into the body of the Azure Dragon. A massive amount of life force surged, and a vast amount of power was reignited. A pair of huge dragon eyes suddenly opened. With a flash of green light, the dragon's body instantly transformed into human form. A young man with 2 horns on his head and wearing a green robe appeared in front of Liu. Ao Qing greets your majesty. Azure Dragon knelt on the ground and saluted Liu. These 2 cultivation methods are suitable for you. Liu waved his hand and shot out 2 light spots, imparting the human immortal martial Dao and the Skywood heavenly art to Azure Dragon Ao Qing. Get up and wait at the side. After reviving Ao Qing, Liu used the same method to revive White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, and Kirin. Fubai greets your majesty. This was a tall young lady with long platinum hair, wearing a white gauze dress and 2 small canine teeth. Zhu Ying greets your majesty. This was a gorgeous lady with fiery red hair, a pair of phoenix eyes, and wearing a red robe. Wu Xian greets your majesty. This was a tall young man wearing black heavy armor with a cold expression. Lin Qi greets your majesty. This was a tall and sturdy young man with a gentle and honest expression. Very good. Liu nodded and imparted the human immortal martial Dao and the 5 elements cultivation method to them. With the 5 Direction Saint Spirit's divine beast nature and the strength of a great emperor. After switching to the human immortal martial Dao, they could quickly be reborn from a drop of blood. Cultivating Liu's 5 element cultivation method was just right for their attributes. Presumably, their strength would quickly improve by leaps and bounds, and they would truly possess the divine might of a great emperor. Sai, bring them out to meet the others. Liu summoned Sai and asked her to bring Ao Qing and the rest to meet the others in the store space. After sending the 5 Direction Saint Spirits away, Liu finally had time to deal with the soul memories of Lord Sky Splitter and Lord Tianluo. I have already uncovered the tip of the iceberg of the origin world. In the future, I will definitely have to come into contact with the outside world. I need to understand more about the outside world. Liu had already asked the system to record a copy of the soul memories of Lord Sky Splitter and Lord Tianluo. Now that he had free time, Liu planned to study the situation of the origin world. System, send me the information in the soul memories of Lord Sky Splitter and Lord Tianluo. Liu instructed, and the system immediately sent the copied information to Liu's mind. With a turn of the soul memories, the 2 people's information was quickly sorted out by Liu. With Liyu's current realm of essence, chi, and spirit, coupled with the ability of Inky Flow soul separation technique to split one's soul into billions, Liyu's current analytical and calculation ability was really terrifying. Southern Heaven Region? Lord Skysplitter and Lord Tianluo are both cultivators of the Southern Heaven Region. After sorting out the two people's memories, Liu opened his mouth wide for a long time. How big is this world? From the two people's memories, Liyu's current location was the Southern Heaven Region, Southern Heaven Sea, Southwest Sea, South Parting Island. The entire Southern Heaven Region was vast and boundless. Even with the strength of Lord Skysplitter and Lord Tianluo, they had not yet walked out of the Southern Heaven Region. How big was this world? With the strength of the two people, they still could not figure it out. Fortunately, the strength of these two people is also a big shot in the Southern Heaven Region, and not a casual ordinary cultivator. If an ordinary cultivator was so powerful, if one day he pretended to be pretentious and met a passerby who could slap him to death, then he would not be able to survive. Fortunately, Liyu's heart was a little relieved. With his current strength, even if he walked in the Southern Heaven Region, he would be a big shot. He did not have to worry about being beaten to death by a street punk. This Southern Heaven Region also has a mortal kingdom and a cultivation sect. Ordinary mortals are not much different from the South Parting Island. Sect power is much stronger. In the memory of Lord Skysplitter and Lord Tianluo, there were countless large and small sect in the Southern Heaven Region. But there were only a few who were at the top of the pyramid. It's just the battle between the two people was earth-shattering, causing such a big movement, but no one paid attention to it. There are many people in the Southern Heaven Region whose strength is not worse than the two of them. So why did no one intervene? Liu frowned, somewhat puzzled. Forget it. I'm too lazy to care. Let's see the difference between the cultivation of the Southern Heaven Region and that of the South Parting Island. The path of cultivation is indeed very different. South Parting Island's so-called Tao confirmation, which was created by Lord Tianluo, did not exist in the Southern Heaven Region. The cultivation of the Southern Heaven Region takes the path of chi cultivation and spirit cultivation and does not pay much attention to body cultivation. The realm is divided into two major realms, the mortal realm and the heaven realm. Liu nodded. It turns out that the so-called celestial being of the net realm is entering the heaven realm. Comparing the strength of the net realm, Liu found that the so-called mortal realm, from chi cultivation to supreme master, belonged to the mortal realm. The celestial being was roughly equivalent to the existence of the great emperor, and the Lord of Heaven was the level of the mortal immortal. In the memory of the two, above the Lord of Heaven, there was the heavenly sovereign. But in the Southern Heaven Region, there are almost no heavenly sovereign level existences. The water of the origin world is still very deep. Liu touched his chin and gently shook his head. It seems, in the origin world, it's still possible to be beaten to death. Chapter 463. It seems that my forces are still not strong enough. With the protection of the Great Net Formation and the 5 directional divine spirits, South Parting Island was not in danger for the time being. Liu also had to consider his next move. The method of the Green Lotus Avatar is worth learning. The personal guards in the mall space are still a little weak. Let them go to the alternate world to train for hundreds or thousands of years before coming back. Thinking of this, Liu sent a message to Tsai, Xiaoling, Ao Rue, and the 5 directional divine spirits who had just been resurrected not long ago. Tsai, Xiaoling, Ao Rue, I will open the teleportation portal to Dragon Island for you. Bring your subordinates and train in the alternate world for 1,000 years before coming back. Yes, everyone accepted the order. However, after hearing Liu's words, Tsai, Xiaoling, and Ao Rue all clenched their fists tightly. They could tell that Liu was not satisfied with their strength. In the battle just now, the personal guards did not play a decisive role. Instead, it was the army that His Majesty had gathered from the alternate world that shone brightly. This made the few of them hold their breaths fiercely. How could the people who followed His Majesty be worse than those stationed outside the alternate world? Go! Liu waved his hand and opened a huge interplanar teleportation portal on the floating island below. We'll take our leave. Sai and the others took their leave and led their subordinates through the portal to Dragon Island, where Ao Jin was. The world where mortals cultivated to become immortals, the continents of the spiritual realm, and even the immortal realm would definitely be harmed by this group of people. But what does this have to do with me? Liu waved his hand indifferently and closed the interplanar teleportation portal. Ao Qing, the 5 of you guard South Parting Island for me and maintain order in the realm. Yes, the 5 directional divine spirits accepted the order in unison. Go! Liu waved his hand and sent the 5 of them out of the mall space. At this point, the mall space was already empty. There was not a single person in sight. Swoosh! At this moment, a green vine swung from the window of the main hall, as if it was greeting Liu. Tung Qing, why didn't you go out? Liu thought that Tung Qing would follow Tsai and the others to the Dragon Island. He didn't expect that this guy was still in the Immortal Mansion. Your Majesty, I'm a gardener. I don't need to fight. The leaves on the green vine drooped down one by one, while Tung Qing mumbled dejectedly, Gardener? All right. Liu shook his head and waved at Tung Qing. Do whatever you want. Tung Qing was too lazy to even transform. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be for her to cultivate seriously. Tung Qing, stay at home and take care of the house. I have to go out for a while. Liu instructed Tung Qing before he turned around and walked into the inner hall. Now, all the problems have been settled. There's nothing to do here anyway. Let's just open the next world. Liu immediately ordered the system to open the next world. The roulette once again appeared in Liu's mind, but the situation this time was somewhat different. System, why are there other types of worlds? In the roulette grid, other than the worlds that were compatible with Liu's power system, there were also worlds of magic, divine arts, sorcerers, arcane arts, and so on. The appearance of these worlds caused Liu to be stunned for a moment. These worlds are obviously not compatible with my path. Why would I go to these worlds? Play a game where the hero fights the Demon King? Or save the princess who was kidnapped by the giant dragon? All the worlds provided by the system have things that will be of great help to the user's growth. Please explore them yourself. The system's flat and rigid tone sounded. Hearing this, Liu pursed his lips. All right, this is a guessing game. Then let's begin. Liu waved his hand. The roulette in his mind made a whoosh sound and spun rapidly. Stop! Under Liu's command, the roulette stopped abruptly. The needle pointed to a world that made Liu speechless. This is a sorcerer's world, right? And those so-called sorcerers in this world are all like mad scientists. All sorts of dissections, all sorts of weird experiments. All of them are neither human nor ghost. Looking at this world, Liu's mouth twitched for a while. I really don't know what benefits this world has for me. It's just that there are people from the same hometown in this world. And he only has a smart chip, and he's already at the peak? Smart chip? My system is much more awesome than that. Liu smiled and waved his hand nonchalantly. All right, since it's a barbarian land, I'll play as I please. A ray of light flashed, and Liu's figure disappeared without a trace. Light flashed in front of his eyes. After a while, the sky changed and a vast land appeared in front of Liu's eyes. System, why did the transmission take longer this time? In the past, whenever he went to a world, after a flash of light, the world would change instantly. This time, it actually took a few more seconds. This made Liu a little surprised. There are many other planes outside the target plane. The system needs to exclude the other planes before it can determine the target plane's coordinates. That's true. In this sorcerer's world, there were indeed countless other planes outside the sorcerer's plane. It was normal for the system to take a little more time. Then, where are we right now? And this is a barbarian world. Not only do I not understand the language, even the appearance is different. Liu shook his head helplessly. He stretched out his hand and added a layer of illusion on himself. In the eyes of others, he was no different from the humans of this world. Let's find a place with people and solve the language problem first. Liu released his divine sense and scanned the surroundings. 100 miles ahead, he found a small castle. All right, I finally found someone. This lush forest was surrounded by undulating mountains. Liu was worried that he wouldn't be able to find anyone in this area. With a flash, Liu stepped out and instantly appeared in the forest outside the small castle. My power comes from my own body and is not affected by the outside world. But I don't know if it will affect others when they use these things. Liu smiled. This question, after I find a host, I will have to test it properly. Standing in the forest, Liu raised his eyes and looked at the castle in front of him. With a sweep of his divine sense, the entire situation of the castle appeared in Liu's senses. There are not many people, including the guards, servants, and the owner of the castle. There are less than 200 people in total. Liu shook his head. This kind of small castle, in the other worlds that Liu had experienced, was at most a landlord family in a small village in the countryside. Let's solve the language problem first. Liu's divine sense trembled. His divine sense spread out and silently swept through the minds of everyone in the castle. Angelo, Baron's second son? And he's from Earth. What's his name, Yi-song? Liu raised his eyebrows in surprise. What a coincidence. Chapter 464. Forget it, I won't disturb you. Liu had no intention of greeting this fellow from the 23rd century who carried a smart ship with him. Transmigrators were all extremely cruel and savage. When a transmigrator discovered the existence of another transmigrator, the first thing they would think of was not to join forces, but to kill the other party. Although this transmigrator in front of him could not threaten Liu. If Liu went looking for him, he would not be greeted with a warm welcome, but a glass of poison wine. Under such circumstances, Liu naturally had no interest in meeting any fellow from the same hometown. This is a barbaric world similar to the Middle Ages. Magi are the strongest beings in this world, above all others. Liu stroked his chin and laughed. Does this belong to the Rudin Kingdom? Then let's go to the kingdom's capital to take a look. After obtaining some information from the memories of the Baron, Liu did not want to disturb this fellow from the same hometown. With a flash of his body, he left the Baron's castle. Following the map in the Baron's memories, Liu quickly arrived near a city. This is the Rudin Kingdom. Liu looked at the city in front of him and furrowed his eyebrows. This city was not big, at most 100,000 people. Other than the beautiful aristocratic district, the other districts were completely dirty and messy. Power belongs to the aristocrats. Strength belongs to the aristocrats. Knowledge also belongs to the aristocrats. Therefore, other than the aristocrats who can live like humans, the rest of the people are as lowly as grass. Of course, this had nothing to do with Liu. He did not intend to come here and play some all the pearls of the world unite game. The information obtained from the Baron's castle is still too little. If I want to know more, this is a good place. Liu's figure flashed and arrived in front of an exquisite white tower in the aristocratic district. There is a person whose soul is several times stronger than others. According to the power system of this world, this person should be an acolyte. Liu smiled and walked into the white tower. With Liu's soul interference, no one could discover his presence. Liu strolled leisurely and walked to the library in the tower. There are quite a few books. Liu glanced at the huge library and found that it was filled with huge books bound in parchment. There were many characters that Liu couldn't recognize. All right, I've only collected some of this world's language from the little Baron's memories. It seems that there is still a long way to go. Liu released his divine sense and scanned the white tower, collecting a copy of everyone's divine sense memories. As a rank 3 acolyte, this old man has quite a bit of knowledge. There were many people in the White Tower. Other than an old level 3 sorcerer apprentice, there were a dozen or so students. From the memories of the souls, Liu found quite a few languages, as well as local customs, geographical environments, historical biographies, and other knowledge. System, scan the books in the library and record the information into the resource vault. Liu was too lazy to flip through the book, so he let the system scan it. This place is only worth this much. Liu glanced around and left the White Tower. In the memories of this acolyte, there is also a basic meditation technique. After leaving the White Tower, Liu casually found a place to sit down and began to organize the various knowledge he had collected from the White Tower. The so-called basic meditation technique is to visualize runes in one's sea of consciousness to increase the strength of one's divine sense. Oh, this world calls it spiritual force. Liu analyzed these runes and found that other than increasing spiritual force, the runes could also absorb the elemental particles drifting between heaven and earth. This thing isn't just a simple method of drawing energy into one's body. Visualizing runes is to settle one's mind and enter meditation. Aren't those elemental particles the elemental energy of heaven and earth? The basic meditation technique, because it was the foundation, was the most basic thing. It was these most basic things that could easily reflect the essence of things. With this foundation, Liu could create a system that conformed to the laws of heaven and earth. The fusion of elemental particles and spiritual force. This is the so-called magic force. Spellcasting is to use the mixture of spiritual force and elemental particles in a certain form to form a spell. The magi of this world, in terms of spellcasting, were essentially not much different from Liu's power system. So, I can play around in this world. Liu smiled and looked towards the horizon, saying a phrase that he had heard many times before. In the name of the Burning Legion, this world will be destroyed. This was the new system that Liu intended to create. To create such a system, I first have to create a transmigrator. Liu raised his head and looked towards the horizon, a smile appearing on his face. The so-called transmigrator is obviously fake. Liu had done things like reconstructing the divine since many times. Adding a fake memory to another person was too easy. A gaming maniac who stayed up all night to clear dungeons for a few days, then suddenly died. This identity of a transmigrator should be very suitable, right? When a gaming maniac came to a different world, he should see everyone as an NPC, right? Killing monsters and leveling up should not be a problem for him, right? Let's do it. Anyway, this was a barbaric world. Even if the fake transmigrator really destroyed this world, what did it have to do with him? After confirming the matter of creating a transmigrator, Liu scanned the resource warehouse, intending to find something to tamper with. Ma Liang, this fellow has not been dealt with? After scanning the resource warehouse, Liu realized that the deity from the lower realm, Ma Liang, who had died in Han Li's world, had been left in the warehouse without being dealt with. Forget it, it's not of much use anyway. Let's take some materials first. Liu waved his hand and gave an order to the system. System, extract a trace of Ma Liang's divine sense and reconstruct his memories. The system followed Liu's instructions and used a trace of Ma Liang's divine sense to reconstruct the memories of a gaming maniac who had suddenly died. All the materials came from Liu's memories before he had transmigrated. With this as the foundation, the system constructed the memories of a gaming maniac, and it would be completely real. A trace of Ma Liang's divine sense and spiritual power are very strong. Therefore, a transmigrator's spiritual power is stronger than an ordinary person's after the fusion of their souls. There are no loopholes. Once Liu inserted this memory into anyone's body, the fusion of their souls would definitely be based on a strong divine sense. This way, a transmigrator would be born. The gaming maniac's memories are out. Naturally, I'll give him a very familiar cheat. Liu waved his hand, and a rune that looked like the word mountain appeared in front of him. This is the army's emblem. Then, in the name of the Burning Legion, this world will be destroyed. Sorcerer World plus Sorcerer World. Chapter 465. Now, I just need to find an unlucky person to carry out my plan. Liu released his soul and scanned the entire Ruden kingdom. Then, he found a suitable unlucky person. Kill him. Kill him. A skinny young man with yellow hair and sunken eyes was curled up on the ground. He was surrounded by a few tall and strong men who were punching and kicking the young man. How dare he steal from Master Andre's shop? Kill him. These thieves are the worst. These poor people, none of them are good. The passers-by who saw this scene did not have any sympathy for the young man. Instead, they all agreed. Bam! A heavy punch landed on the young man's head. The young man's eyes rolled back, and he fell to the ground, not making a sound. Oomph! This bastard got off easy. Andre waved his hand angrily. Throw him out. Throw him into the mass grave outside the city. After the farce ended, the young man was thrown into the mass grave. Under normal circumstances, this would just be another corpse in a mass grave outside the city. However, this was not normal anymore. Young man, are you still lamenting the unfairness of fate? Are you still shouting for justice? Li Yu's figure appeared in the mass grave. He looked at the young man lying on the ground and sighed. Li Yu used his soul to scan Andre and the young man's memories. Naturally, he knew the truth of the matter. Your sister was working in Andre's shop. Then one day, your sister disappeared. Andrea tells you that your sister has run off with a foreign adventurer. But you didn't believe him. Li Yu sighed and shook his head. Your judgment is correct. Your sister was killed by Andre after he raped her. You went to find out the truth, but you were discovered. After that, Andre accused you of being a thief and killed you. So, this is the revenge story of a hot-blooded young man. Li Yu pointed, and a ball of light rushed into the young man's mind. At the same time, on the back of the young man's right hand, a rune insignia of the word mountain appeared. The wheel of fate has turned to another path. Young man, bring disaster to this world for me. Li Yu smiled. His figure flickered and disappeared in an instant. Vengeful souls cry out in the abyss. Unyielding wills howl in hell. Awaken, shadow and flame, blood and soul. Immortal in the curse, eternal in the pain. Be destroyed under the blazing flames. Everything will be reduced to ashes. This young man who was on the verge of death, in the endless darkness, in the coldness of death, was suddenly awakened by a mighty voice. The young man suddenly woke up and sat up. He stretched out his hands in front of his eyes. I'm not dead yet. I remember. I was playing a game. Suddenly, everything went black. No. I was killed by Andre. The two different memories kept circulating in his mind. The young man felt as if a blender had been turned on in his head, and even his brain was about to be turned into paste. Huff. The young man breathed heavily, and only after a long time did he regain his senses. I've transmigrated, so transmigrating really does happen. The young man struggled to get up from the ground. His body was covered in cuts and bruises, and he was in excruciating pain. The young man's body swayed, and he grimaced in pain. Damn that Andre. I'll get my revenge. I'll definitely get my revenge. The young man raised his head and looked in the direction of Rudin Kingdom, and his eyes emitted a cold light. This body is too weak, even weaker than my body before I transmigrated. The gaming fanatic before he transmigrated lacked training, and naturally, he was as thin as a stick. Now, this body was even weaker than before. The foundation of this body is too weak. Not only was my body weak, but I was also killed by someone, and I have a blood feud with someone. More importantly, this body's identity is just a poor commoner. After the memory fusion, the young man received all the memories of his previous body and was speechless at the situation in front of him. Other people transmigrated to kill and dominate. Why am I so miserable? Where's my cheat? Where's my system? Just as the young man was complaining, he suddenly saw a very familiar emblem on the back of his hand. This is the Legion emblem? The Burning Legion emblem? There's such a thing? Am I seeing things because I've been playing too many games? The young man rubbed his eyes and rubbed the emblem on the back of his hand. He realized that the emblem seemed to be a birthmark, and it grew directly on his flesh. Birthmark? At this moment, the young man recalled the memories of his previous body. This Legion emblem has always been on the back of my hand. I've had this emblem since I was born. The young man's expression changed, and he suddenly thought of a possibility. Did I not just transmigrate? But I've already transmigrated for 15 years, and I've only just awakened the memories of my previous life. This situation made the young man's expression turn ugly. Originally, the young man didn't feel too much sympathy for his predecessor's grievances and hatred. But the situation was completely different now. His previous body was himself. It was just that he had not awakened all the memories. Then, the hatred of his previous body was his own hatred. "Andre, you killed my sister." The young man looked coldly at Rudin Kingdom and clenched his fists tightly. "Andre, I will definitely chop off your head. I will use this as a sacrifice to my sister in this world." The young man clenched his teeth, took a deep breath, and slowly looked away, focusing on the Legion emblem on the back of his hand. "So, this is my Goldfinger? The Burning Legion emblem. Director Sarge, I hope you won't disappoint me." The young man raised his right hand in front of his eyes and carefully looked at the emblem on the back of his hand. After a while, he frowned. "How do I activate this thing? Dark Titan, Sargeras, Polluter, Archimon, Deceiver, Kill Jaden, Destroyer, Manara." He called out the names of a few Burning Legion bosses, but the emblem on the back of his hand did not move. "Looks like calling him boss won't work." The young man frowned, and then his eyes lit up. "If I can't call him boss, I can at least call him a slogan, right?" Raising his right hand, the young man shouted, "In the name of the Burning Legion, this world will be destroyed." Asterisk boom. Asterisk a loud explosion sounded in the young man's mind, and a shocking scene appeared in his mind. Endless shadows surged, and monstrous flames surged. Groups of large, ferocious demons with vast auras raised their flaming weapons and roared into the sky. "In the name of the Burning Legion, this world will be destroyed." New World, Sorcerer World plus Sorcerer World. Chapter 466. Army Insignia Activated. System activating, system binding, system activation complete, binding successful. A series of notifications rang out in his mind. Between the darkness and the raging flames, an icon that the boy was very familiar with appeared in his mind. Warcraft Games Activation Program? It can't be. There's even such a thing. I don't dare to say anything else. But who am I afraid of when it comes to games? The youth's face lit up with surprise. "Activate game." The youth hurriedly shouted in his mind. Schwa. Endless darkness and flames burst out from the icon, and a familiar interface appeared in front of the youth. "There's no need to log in, and I can directly enter the race and profession interface." The youth smiled as he looked at the race and profession interface. Only humans can choose. On the race interface, the other icons were all dim, and only the human icon lit up. Well, my body is a human, so naturally there's no way to choose other races. Opening the human interface, as expected, there was no choice of gender. In reality, there was no way to be a transvestite. Of course, the youth did not have such a hobby. Profession, locked into Warlock. On the profession interface, other than Warlock, there was no way to choose any other profession. Is it because of the army insignia? Other than Warlock, there are no other professions that can be related to the Burning Legion. Actually, if I could choose elves, I prefer demon hunters. Thinking of this, the youth laughed. Sure enough, humans are greedy. The youth quickly chose his race and profession, and then an interface appeared. Name. The youth was stunned for a moment, and then laughed. This setting is very humane. My original name was Yu. This world's name is Dean. Then, Dean? It seems. Eggy used to be called this name. Real name confirmed. Race and profession confirmed. Army insignia binding complete. The newly promoted Burning Overlord, the commander of the Legion in this world. I wish you to be invincible, conquer all the way, and spread the burning flames throughout the world. After the notification sounded, the image of the newly named Dean appeared in his mind. This is the character interface? Dean looked at the skinny figure on the interface with dry hair and shook his head slightly. Character attributes. Other than spirit, there isn't even a one for the rest. My Burning Overlord is so weak that it's unbearable to look at. In terms of character attributes, other than spirit being 5 and mana being 5, strength, vitality, and dexterity were all only a few points. Attribute settings are compatible with the current world, based on the attributes of a normal adult male. All right, that's the reality. His body was so weak. His strength, constitution, and dexterity were only a few points. It was normal for him to be weaker than a normal adult man. His mental strength is 5 times that of an ordinary person. My soul can travel to another world, so it's reasonable for my spiritual power to be strong. But it doesn't have the intelligence attribute, and it has already become magic power. It was fine as long as he understood the rules. Things like attributes could be raised. Julian turned his attention to other things. First was the spell interface. Unsurprisingly, there was only one shadow arrow on the spell interface. But this was enough. With this spell, Andre would definitely die without a burial ground with a single strike. Does it have its own storage space? With a thought, UD opened his storage space. Sure enough, all the novice equipment is here. He saw a dark red monk's robe, trousers, boots, a fong-like dagger, water, and bread in the storage space. Of course, there was also an indispensable hearthstone. These things are not ordinary. Changing into the monk's robe and hanging the dagger, Julian took out a piece of bread. Food can restore vitality, and water can restore magic power. If these things are used well, they're all treasures that can save lives. At this moment, his body had not recovered from his serious injuries, so he had to consume a piece of bread. Putting the bread into his mouth and swallowing it in a few mouthfuls, Julian sat on the ground and waited for his body to recover vitality. Sure enough, after a moment, a warm current spread throughout his body, like a hot spring washing his whole body. Udian's injuries were quickly healed as his vitality sprouted from his body. Not only that, under the nourishment of this vitality, some of the old injuries and diseases that originally existed in Julian's body also recovered at the same time. It's really good stuff. Julian patted his clothes and stood up from the ground. At this time, the sky was already dark. The mass grave was originally in the wilderness. As the sky darkened, some wild beasts that were used to foraging in the mass grave had already come out. A wolf's howl rose in front of him. A pair of dark green eyes stared at Julian, and a low growl came from its throat. A black wolf. Julian's gaze focused, and he took a deep breath and slowly stood still. Just in time to test the power of my spell. With a touch of his mind, the shadow arrow icon on the spell interface lit up. Inexplicable information surged into his mind. Spell model, casting gestures, casting spells, all kinds of information were deeply imprinted in Julian's mind. So I have to learn the spell before I can cast it. The modern world was not a game after all. In the game, one only needed to click the mouse to cast a spell, but in reality, all the steps of casting a spell were indispensable. Fortunately, as long as I activate the skill, I can learn this spell. Otherwise, I, the Burning Lord, would immediately die in the mouth of a wild wolf. Julian stared at the black wolf in front of him expressionlessly. A mysterious and low incantation sounded, and a ball of black light circulated and condensed in his hand. Shadow arrow. With a shake of his wrist, the black ball of light whizzed out and hit the black wolf with a bang. Rustle. A corrosive sound was heard. Under this shadow arrow, the black wolf didn't even have time to scream before it was corroded into slag by the dark energy. Even the ground was corroded into a deep pit with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Good heavens, a level 1 shadow arrow actually has such great power? Seeing the effect of a shadow arrow, Udian was shocked. It's just mana consumption. After casting the shadow arrow, it consumed a bit of mana. In other words, without recovering mana, Julian could only cast 5 shadow arrows. This bit of mana isn't enough to do anything. It seems that I have to level up as soon as possible. After killing that black wolf, his experience bar was full, which meant that he had to kill at least 9 more black wolves to level up. My mana isn't enough at the moment, and my close combat ability can't be ignored. He reached out and pulled out a dagger, waving it in his hand a few times. Julian found that he was no stranger to using a dagger. Weapon skills. Julian remembered that using weapons was also a skill. He quickly opened the basic skills bar and saw that there were items such as weapon skills, armor skills, unarmed combat skills, and language skills. Weapon skills can also be leveled up. Julian waved his dagger, looked up at the forest behind the mass grave, and grinned. It seems that I have to start leveling up. Chapter 467. Yudian? This name? Liu couldn't help but shake his head when he saw the new name that the boy had given him. Boy, since you're going to be called Yudian, then you're going to become a demon. Since you have such a request, how can I not satisfy you? Liu looked at the direction where Yudian was leveling up with interest. His face was full of smiles. If you want to become a demon, then I'll make one for you. Although there was a world of gods on the other side of this crystal wall, there was also the 9 hells and the endless abyss. However, these demons and devils were only derivatives of the evil origin of this crystal wall. They looked very powerful, but in fact, they didn't have much potential. 3,000 ancient bloodlines, ancient gods, ancient demons, and ancient devils. An ancient devil with the origin of darkness and fire is very suitable for you. Boy, work hard. When the time comes, I'll let you exchange for an ancient devil bloodline. Liu had decided the fate of the young man named Yudian with a smile on his face. Whoosh! The sharp dagger slashed and cut off the neck of a black wolf in front of him. I've finally leveled up. A golden light spiraled up, and a powerful force surged in his body. Yudian only felt that his whole body had been reborn. Open the attribute interface. Strength 1. 5. Constitution 1. 5. Agility 1. 4. Spirit 6. 0. Magic 6. 0. All attributes increase by 1. It's really a rebirth. At this moment, Yudian's body was no longer thin and weak. Instead, it had become tall and straight. His body was healthier and stronger than a normal adult. After leveling up, my body's attributes have improved tremendously. More importantly, my skills have improved even more. The dagger in his hand danced like a flower. This dagger had become very flexible in Yudian's hands, as if he had practiced for countless years. Dagger skills have leveled up to beginner level. Unlike in a game, Yudian's current magic was not enough. Spells could only be used as a decisive force. In the process of leveling up, he still needed to use weapons most of the time. I don't have as many blue potions as in the game. At this time, Yudian missed the blue potions in the game and the mage's water-making and food-making skills. If I can level up as soon as possible and learn the life diversion skill, I'll be able to convert life force into magic power. Combined with life absorption, there's no need to worry about magic power. But for now, Yudian could only stab him with a knife most of the time. With my current strength, it's enough for me to take revenge. Tucking away the dagger, Julian walked out of the mass grave with his body covered in blood. Back home, Yudian fetched a bucket of water and washed the blood off his body. Then he lay down on the bed and slept well. Clang. Early the next morning, the morning bell had already rung on the bell tower at the peak of the mountain in the north of the royal city. It's already morning? Eurydian got up from the bed, washed up, dressed neatly, hung the dagger on his waist, and stepped out of the door with his head held high. From today onwards, I will no longer be that lowly youth who is at the mercy of others. Today is the day I can hold my head high. Today is the day I take my revenge. Facing the bright morning sun, Julian embarked on his own journey. This is a cold world, a world dripping with blood. In this world, the strong make the rules, and power determines everything. And I, in this small rooting kingdom, with my magic power, I can ignore any rules. Because I am the rule. Yudian straightened his monk robe, straightened his chest, and raised his head. The dark red monk's robe shimmered with a bloody halo under the morning sun, like fresh blood. Walking along the bluestone paved street, Yudian once again came to Andre's shop. Andre was a relative of a baron. Although he didn't have a title, he used the baron's name to gather some subordinates and dominate this street. Back here again, seeing the familiar shop and the figure that he hated so much, Yudian's eyes became cold. Yesterday, I could only be slaughtered. Today, I'm different. The dean who was trampled on is gone forever. Udian clenched his fists tightly, took a deep breath, straightened his chest, raised his head, and shouted at the shop, "Andre, come out and die." Hearing the roar, the passers-by stopped and looked at the young man in the dark red robe with shock. Who is this person? How dare he provoke Master Andre? Who is this person? Look at his clothes. He doesn't look like an ordinary person. The passers-by looked at Udian in surprise and talked about him. How dare you, bastard? There was an angry roar in Andre's shop. A group of tall and strong men surrounded a fat man in noble clothes and rushed out of the shop angrily. It's you? Andre was shocked when he saw Udian. He turned his head and reprimanded his men. Damn it, this bastard is still alive? What are you doing? Boss, we saw that he was dead, so we threw him in a mass grave. I didn't expect him to be alive. The men around Andre lowered their heads with resentment. Forget it. Andre waved his hand and looked at Udian with a grim smile. He's not dead? If he's not dead, I'll kill him again. Want to kill me? You're not qualified. Udian sneered and raised his hand. A dark shadow of light swirled in his hand. This is the anger of revenge. Shadow arrow. With a flick of his wrist, the dark ball of light whizzed out and smashed into Andre's body with a bang. Buzz, buzz, the power of darkness corroded his body, and a black fog rose up. Andre didn't even have time to scream before he turned into a pile of corroded residue. This extremely terrifying scene scared the souls out of everyone's bodies. The onlookers screamed in fear, shouted crazily, and fled in all directions. Early in the morning, it was the most crowded time in the city. The screams of fear and the fleeing crowd spread the chaos further and further. In a moment, the surrounding streets were in chaos. What's going on? The commotion alarmed the city guards, and the city guards began to reorganize the order. Amidst the rumbling of horse hooves, a group of knights galloped over and waved their whips to disperse the chaotic crowd. You're the one who created this mess? A knight wearing heavy armor and holding a giant sword urged his horse over and pointed his sword at Udian. Kid! Just as the knight was about to ask, he suddenly saw the large hole in the ground and the pile of mangled remains. He trembled all over. Wizard! Wizard? The knight was so scared that he trembled all over. He quickly turned over and threw away his giant sword, kneeling on the ground with one knee. Sir, please forgive me. Sir, please forgive me. Sure enough, Udian took a deep breath and clenched his fist. A smile appeared on his face. Sure enough, power is the rule. Chapter 468. Greetings, Master Wizard. A moment later, all the nobles in Rudin Kingdom, including the royal family, received the news of the wizard's arrival. Therefore, all the nobles, including the king, came to greet Udian respectfully. Rise! Udian suppressed the excitement in his heart and waved to the crowd. Whether it was the memory of his predecessor or the fictional game maniac, Udian was just a person at the bottom of the social ladder. He had never experienced the life of a superior. Fortunately, his identity as a traveler gave him a natural sense of pride. He felt superior when facing these bumpkins from another world. Nothing went wrong with this response. Greetings, Master Wizard. Greetings, Master Wizard. Only the truth lives forever. At this time, an old man in a long robe with a scholarly temperament walked out of the crowd and saluted Udian. Udian was a little surprised by the words of the level 3 apprentice. He did not know how to answer. What should I say? Is the holy light fooling you? Or is Mother Earth fooling you? Or is it power and glory, blood and thunder? It can't be for the Alliance, right? At this time, the system prompt sounded in Udian's mind. Level 3 apprentice, burn. Element, wind. Elemental affinity, low. Wind, element. A few thoughts flashed through Julian's mind, and he suddenly had an idea. He pretended to be enigmatic and nodded to the wizard apprentice. May the wind guide you on your path. Thank you, master. The apprentice named Burn was shocked when he heard this. You are indeed a master wizard. You can see my elemental affinity at a glance. It is our honor to have Master Wizard here. It is also the honor of the kingdom of Rudin. The king of Rudin stepped forward and bowed to Yudian. A banquet has been prepared in the palace. Please come, Master Wizard. Then, okay. Since last night, he had only eaten a piece of bread. Julian, who didn't have a single penny on him, decided to extort money from the king who had delivered himself to his doorstep. Soon, a group of nobles surrounded Yudian and went to the palace. The palace was resplendent and beautifully decorated. The floor was covered with a soft, plush carpet, and the surrounding walls were covered with light gauze curtains. Rows of tables were placed with exquisite food. Everyone, let's toast to the arrival of the great sorcerer. The king picked up a crystal glass and poured a glass of blood-red wine. He smiled and greeted Julian. Cheers! The group of nobles also agreed with a smile. You guys are drinking, but what the hell is this cup of mine? It was difficult for Julian to refuse such hospitality, so he had no choice but to raise his glass. But it wasn't red wine in his cup, but a dark green viscous liquid that emitted a strange fishy smell. Tree Demon Sap. Within 24 hours after drinking, 10% of your spiritual power and magic power will be restored. When Julian picked up the cup, the system prompt sounded at the same time. Sir, our Rudin kingdom is just a small place. We don't have anything good. The sap was left behind by the royal family many years ago. The third-rank apprentice, Byrne, raised his cup and smiled at Yudian. It's all thanks to Master's blessing that I can enjoy such a treasure. 10% of my magic power, and it will take another day. This thing is a treasure? Julian still had some cool spring water and small bread in his space backpack. How could the effects of the spring water be any better than this ghost tree demon sap? I hope it doesn't taste too bad. Julian frowned slightly. He picked up the cup and drank the viscous liquid. It tastes like green grass, a bit like jelly. It's not bad. After drinking it, he seemed to be more spirited. It seemed that this thing was still useful. The banquet continued. Under the flattery of the Rudin nobles, the banquet finally came to an end after a few hours. The nobles reluctantly dispersed. The king and the apprentice wizard, Bane, accompanied Julian to sit down in the living room. Sir Wizard, King Rudin took out a 1-meter-long quaint box and presented it to Yudian. Sir Wizard, according to the principle of wizard trade, I'd like to use this as an exchange. Can you do me a favor, Sir Wizard? Help? What kind of help? Julian glanced at the long box, then glanced at the king without batting an eyelid. Sir Wizard, it's like this. The apprentice Bane continued. Sir, our Rudin kingdom is facing a crisis of destruction. There is a kingdom called Slan in the north. This year, an apprentice came back from a wizard academy. They have 2 sorcerer apprentices. Is that so? Julian nodded slowly and pretended to understand. In fact, he did not even know what a wizard academy was. That's right. After this apprentice came back, the strategic balance has been broken. The Slan kingdom has already deployed their troops to the border and is about to attack us. King Rudin looked up at Julian and respectfully requested, Sir Wizard, this is a treasure passed down from generation to generation in the Rudin kingdom. I hope to use this as a price to ask Sir Wizard for help. You only need to kill one of their apprentices and restore the strategic balance. What do you think? Random mission, King Rudin's request. Mission requirement, kill at least 1 apprentice of the Slan kingdom. Mission description, one of the apprentices of the Slan kingdom has returned. The strategic balance has been broken and war is imminent. King Rudin hopes that you can bring peace to this kingdom. Mission reward, 100 experience points. A treasure of the Rudin kingdom. Special note, as the leader of the Burning Legion in this world, you can ignore any rules and directly take this treasure of the Rudin kingdom. Hearing the system prompt, Yudian trembled. He was surprised. There's a quest. Sir Wizard, seeing that Julian's expression was not right, King Rudin and Bane were surprised and quickly asked carefully, Oh, nothing. Julian came back to his senses and looked at the long box on the table in front of him. A treasure of the Rudin kingdom? What is it? Sir, this is a sword. King Rudin quickly got up and opened the long box, revealing a thin sword inside. It was a thin and long dark golden rapier. The triangular blade was extremely sharp, and the guard was in the shape of a rose. The whole rapier was extremely exquisite, as if it was a work of art. This rapier, Julian reached out and touched the hilt, and the system notification instantly sounded in his mind. Discovered class inheritance item. Rose's Thorn, single-handed rapier. Equipment grade, excellent. Equipment attribute. Agility +1, Spirit +1. Note: this equipment contains class inheritance information. Inherited class, Arcane Swordsman. The Arcane Swordsman class can be merged into the Sorcerer class. Do you want to accept this inheritance information? Class inheritance, item. Julian's eyes lit up. Arcane Swordsman? This seems very useful. Chapter 469. What's the origin of this sword? Eurydion picked up the sword and turned to look at King Rudin. His eyes were cold. If this sword was really an heirloom of the Rudin royal family, it meant that the Rudin royal family had a secret swordsman a long time ago. If there really was a secret swordsman, the Rudin royal family would definitely know the purpose of this sword and would not give it away so casually. Therefore, this sword was definitely not the royal family's treasure. King Rudin and Bane looked at each other, and there was a hint of panic in their eyes. My lord, you are wise. Bane stood up and bowed to Julian. This sword is indeed not a royal treasure, but I exchanged it from someone when I was studying at the Sorcerer Academy. So, you plan to use this to fool me? Julian raised his sword with a sneer on his face. It seemed that he was very dissatisfied with the way the two of them had treated him. My lord, please forgive us. Bane quickly apologized to Julian. My lord, although this sword is not an heirloom of the royal family, it still has an extraordinary origin. It say no more. Julian waved his hand and interrupted Bane. This is an offense. Since you are an apprentice, you should know the price of offending a sorcerer. Yes, I know my mistake, Bane said as he took out a small box and handed it to Julian respectfully. My lord, there are 1,000 magic stones here. Although it's not much, it's all I have. Magic stones? Although Julian didn't know what a magic stone was, he still took it calmly and put it into his storage space. My lord, you have a storage space item? No wonder you are an official sorcerer. Seeing this, Bane was shocked and became even more cautious. 1,000 magic stones? Julian snorted and reached out to grab Rose's Thorn. With a wave of his hand, he put it into his storage space. I will go to Slan Kingdom and take a look. If I see them, I can kill that apprentice. Eurydion stood up and looked at Bane with an expressionless face. But you know very well that offending a wizard is not something that can be solved with 1,000 magic stones. Sir, I am only an apprentice sorcerer. I don't have anything valuable to offer. Byrne looked at Julian with a bitter face. His forehead was sweating. At this moment, Bane was already regretting his decision. Bane had found the Rose's Thorn in an ancient ruin when he was studying at the Wizard Academy. Many official wizards had seen this sword, and they were sure that it was a wizard magic item. However, no one had discovered any function of this sword. Other than being a sword, it had no other use at all. As a sorcerer, what was the use of a sword? Thus, the sword fell into Bane's hands. At first, Byrne thought that Julian would be able to fool him since he didn't look very old. Even if he was an official wizard, he wouldn't have much experience. He didn't expect that as soon as Eurydion got the sword, he would see the problem. He directly concluded that this sword wasn't a royal sword, which meant that he had discovered that this sword couldn't be used at all. Sir, you see? Byrne wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and looked at Julian pitifully. I don't have any resources from the mortal world. I still need to stay here for a while. So, Julian was penniless. Of course, he wouldn't let go of such an opportunity to extort him. Without money, it was inconvenient to do anything. Resources from the mortal world? Bane was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what Julian meant. Sir, are you talking about gold coins? King Rudin was a king after all, so he reacted quickly. Gold coins? Bane immediately reacted and heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, Yes, magic stones are too expensive. It's inconvenient to use them in the mortal world. We'll prepare them for you immediately. Right away. After that, Julian took a box of gold coins and left Rudin's palace under the grateful gazes of King Rudin and Bane. I have to go to Slan Kingdom to take a look. After leaving the palace, Julian went straight out of Rudin's city and headed towards Slan Kingdom. As for whether King Rudin and Bane would find out that he was originally a poor person in the slums, Julian didn't care at all. With Andre as an example, no one would have the courage to test the power of Udian's spells. Leveling up is the key, but it's still difficult to level up now. After leveling up to level 2, Julian found that the EXP he gained from killing normal beasts was negligible. He had leveled up from level 1 to level 2 after killing 10 black wolves. If he went to kill hundreds of black wolves now, he wouldn't level up even after killing hundreds of them. So, I'll have to try killing a wizard apprentice. This was one of the reasons why Julian went to Slan Kingdom. There was another reason, of course, which was the random mission. 100 EXP was enough to level up. Of course, Julian wouldn't let it go. I need to deal with that sword too. Julian took out the rose's thorn from his storage space. He looked at the sharp, dark golden blade and smiled happily. Arcane swordsman? What kind of profession was this thing? It could be combined with the sorcerer profession? Julian opened the system interface and looked at the information displayed. A smile appeared on his face. The arcane swordsman inheritance has been recorded. Would you like to merge it with the sorcerer profession model? Merge, Julian thought, and the arcane swordsman inheritance was instantly merged with the sorcerer profession model. Arcane swordsman, a swordsman profession that uses runes to drive elemental power. Strengthening runes, gale, explosion. Elemental runes, darkness, flame, storm. Battle runes, thrust, leap. Arcane swordsman runes, conforms to the rules of inscription. Inscription interface activated. Inscription recorded. After the arcane swordsman was merged with the sorcerer model, an inscription interface suddenly appeared behind Julian's character interface. The 7 runes of the arcane swordsman appeared. At the same time, the rose's thorn in his hand underwent a huge change. On the blade of the sword, runes that looked like tiny rose flowers rapidly condensed, and a powerful energy fluctuation rippled out. A stream of heat flowed from the hilt into Julian's body. Julian found that he was more agile, and his spirit was more uplifted. Agility +1, spirit +1. The effect is really obvious. This sword could increase spirit and agility by 1 point. Julian's personal attributes on the attribute panel, agility and spirit, had both increased by 1 point. Of course, the increase in attributes was only a part of it. The new runes were the key. These runes are the key to obtaining the inheritance. Only by understanding the runes can the inheritance be activated. No wonder Burn and the others don't know the function of this sword. Julian looked at the introduction of the inscription interface and understood the reason. The runes of the arcane swordsman have become inscriptions? How powerful are these runes? Julian was very interested in these 7 runes. Chapter 470. Is the Gale rune an acceleration rune? Udian looked at the runes on the rune interface and studied each one carefully. Acceleration is very useful. Whether it was movement acceleration, attack acceleration, or reaction acceleration, they were all very useful. Activate the Gale rune. Udian's mind touched the Gale rune, and the Gale rune on the rune interface suddenly lit up. Ugh, Udian groaned in pain. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if a knife was constantly cutting the flesh on his chest. He pulled open his clothes and saw a mysterious rune the size of a gold coin emerging from his flesh on his chest. The so-called rune is actually a tattoo? Udian thought for a moment and understood. The runes of a secret swordsman had to be engraved on the body to be effective. What is the effect of this rune? Udian used his magic to activate the rune. An invisible current of air swirled around his body, and Udian felt his whole body relax. His figure flashed, and his whole body shot out like an arrow from a bow. His figure was like a phantom flying around at high speed. I can't feel the slightest wind resistance. It's really fast, as expected of the Gale rune, but it consumes a lot of magic. In just a short while, he had used up a bit of magic. Udian had only 7 magic points equipped with Rose's Thorn, which could not be used for long periods of time. This skill could only be used as a burst skill. After deactivating the Gale rune, Udian continued to activate the other runes. The burst rune increased instantaneous explosive power. Activating the burst rune at the moment of drawing the sword would double the power of the attack, and its lethality would be very high. In addition to these 2 strengthening runes, the elemental runes were activated at the same time. Darkness, Flame, Storm. These 3 runes were branded on Udian's lower abdomen. The 3 gold coin-sized runes circled below his navel in a triangular shape. These 3 runes did not increase Udian's strength significantly, because they were continuous runes, similar to passive skills in games. However, these 3 runes were very unusual. They could increase the speed of absorption of elemental particles and add elemental power to swordsmanship. These 3 runes were the core runes of a secret swordsman. In this world, pure physical attacks were negligible. Only by controlling and using the elements could one achieve the greatest strength. It was because of these 3 runes that arcane swordsmen possessed the foundation to manipulate elementium powers. It allowed them to stand out from ordinary knights and swordsmen and become existences equal to adepts. As for the remaining 2 battle skill runes, they were Stab and Jump. These 2 runes were engraved on Julian's back and waist. Stab. Eurydian raised his rapier and activated the rune. His body was like an arrow that had just left the bow. In an instant, he rushed forward more than 30 meters. The rapier in his hand thrust out, and a 10-meter-long sword wind burst out, and a sonic boom resounded in the air. Not only does this sudden thrust have the effect of charge, its lethality is also astonishing. Udian was a little surprised by the effect of this sword. As for the Jump rune, Julian activated it and jumped more than 5 meters high and more than 10 meters away. It was also a very useful skill. After understanding the abilities of a secret swordsman, Udian was more confident in his own strength. He could cast spells from a distance and use his swordsmanship in close combat. It was very convenient. Keeping the Rose's Thorn, Udian set off for the Slan Kingdom, intending to fulfill King Rudin's request. Udian felt that he had gained a lot, and so did Liu. A secret swordsman? Using runes to manipulate elementium powers? This thing is very interesting. Udian's so-called game system was still under Liu's control. The inheritance of the secret swordsman had been integrated into the warlock model, and all the mysteries of the secret swordsman were revealed to Liu. Runes, elementium, these things, I can still play with a lot of tricks. A smile appeared on Liu's face. After deciphering the principles of runes, I can easily create many professions. Seems like I can play with them. As for strengthening runes, other than Gale and Explosion, Liu could immediately create some tremendous strength runes that increase strength, body hardening, runes that increase defense, and so on. As for elementium runes, all the elements in this world could be used. Other than darkness, fire, and storm, light, ice, lightning, earth, and so on could be created. As for combat runes, there were even more. Block, parry, dodge, behead, backstab, bash. There were countless of them. The warrior professions in this world, even the strongest Grand Knight, have become the warlock's toy. They're either experimental subjects or slaves. It's simply unbearable to look at. Liu sighed and shook his head. Speaking of which, without a warrior's blood, how can a wizard be so carefree? Back then, when I was clearing dungeons, I was also a meat shield. With an idea and a foundation, Liu's imagination went wild, and he immediately prepared to implement his plan for the rise of warriors. First, I need to perfect the warrior's skill system. Liu recalled the games he played in the past. How about Hot-Blooded Legend? Speaking of which, If a warrior grinds the half-moon blade and uses Raging Flame Slash, the dragon-slaying saber will be given away with a click. Wouldn't that be very cool? As soon as he thought of it, Liu immediately began to think about the problem of how to set up a legendary warrior's skills. First, Elementium runes. A warrior who is unable to use Elementium power is a miserable existence in this world, unable to survive. Therefore, I need to give the warrior the ability to use Elementium power. Warriors needed powerful strength and a sturdy body. Therefore, the Earth rune was a must. The Earth rune could absorb the power of the Earth and continuously refine the body, allowing the warrior to have high strength, high vitality, and high defense, possessing the foundation to become a tank. To use Raging Flame Slash, the Flame rune is essential. Before learning Raging Flame Slash, basic swordsmanship, attack, assassination, half-moon, these are the main skills of a warrior. Therefore, I need to give the warrior a sharp metal rune. After confirming the Elementium rune foundation, the rest was easy. Combat rune, Barbaric Charge. Lion's Roar, Strengthening rune, Diamond Body. Swordsmanship skills, Basic swordsmanship, attack swordsmanship, assassination swordsmanship, half-moon slash, Raging Flame swordsmanship, chasing sun swordsmanship. After setting up, Liu deduced it in his soul, and then let the system simulate it in the illusory world. There are no problems. The rune still needs to be modified. It cannot appear directly in the form of runes, or else it will be hard to avoid being discovered by the Magi. Thinking of the Magi of this world, dissection, human experiments, bloody and horrifying, it was really a little scary. Then, with the runes as the foundation, I will come up with a cultivation technique. This so-called cultivation technique, in fact, is to let the warrior, in the process of training, condense these few runes in his body according to the cultivation technique. This way, the Magi would definitely not be interested in studying the breathing technique and the swordsmanship skills of the warrior. This would give the warrior enough time to make a name for himself and not be strangled in the cradle by the Magi from start. Very good, let's do it this way. Liu laughed heartily. Even a bitter warrior can have a spring. Seeing my update, seeing my hard work, all the viewers, aren't you going to express your gratitude? Chapter 471. So, I will create a holy land for warriors. Liu looked up to the north, his mind recalling all the information he collected from the Rudin Kingdom, and quickly chose a suitable place. Red Moss Highlands, the nation of warriors. Liu recalled the records and the information and became interested in this land that was famous for its valiant warriors. Every adult male of the Red Moss Highlands is the best mercenary. This was the impression the people of the countless kingdoms had of the Red Moss Highlands warriors. Of course, there was still half a sentence left unsaid. The best mercenaries were also the best cannon fodder. This nation that worships valor is the best place to spread the path of warriors. After making up his mind, Liu chose the location of the Red Moss Highlands, opened the portal, and teleported himself there. Before his eyes was a dark red highland. The dark red ground looked like coagulated blood. The ground was barren. Other than some drought-resistant plants, there was only red moss all over the place. There was no other vegetation on the blood-red highland. No wonder the Red Moss Highlands produced warriors. Looking at the land, Liu sighed and shook his head. For the men living on this land, if they don't risk their lives, if they don't go out and risk their lives, their wives and children will starve to death. This is a suffering tribe. Every man is destined to step on the path of slaughter after birth, using blood and life to exchange for the survival of his family. Liu's divine soul scanned the Red Moss Highlands. On the vast highland, countless scenes appeared in Liu's divine soul senses. The barren land, the poor people, and countless tall and strong men. All the men on this land were in their prime, not a single old man. The oldest was only in his 40s. As a warrior, an old and frail warrior would not be able to survive. Then, brave warriors, fearless warriors, I will give you a chance to change your fate. From today onwards, the name of warriors will spread throughout the world. Liu smiled and stepped into the center of the red moss highlands. There was a blood-red mountain there. The crescent blade sweeps an army. The blazing slash shakes the world. Barbaric charge is unstoppable. Lion's roar frightens thousands. A solid body is the backbone of the earth. His tyrannical strength is like the roar of the wind. Burn the blood of a warrior. Liu stood at the peak of the dark red mountain. He took a deep breath and pressed his hand on the cliff beside him. Xianwang Qi reshaped the mountains and rivers. The vast and mighty Qi of heaven and earth surged out like a raging tide, instantly engulfing the entire mountain. Come out, War God Temple. With a brush of the Qi of heaven and earth, the dark red mountain was reshaped and transformed. The entire mountain had undergone a huge change. The entire mountain had turned into an enormous palace. It was a blood-red temple, a temple for warriors. The war god temple that I built cannot be destroyed so easily. Liu considered that if any sorcerer didn't like the war god's temple and directly smashed it with a spell, it would also cause damage to the war god's temple. Therefore, he decided to reinforce it. The law of order construction, sturdy. With a brush of yin and yang qi, Liu bestowed the law of sturdy on this temple. With Liu's strength, there was probably no one in this world who could destroy this temple. Just now, when I used the yin and yang qi to construct the law of order, it seemed like Liu raised his head to look at the horizon, a trace of surprise appearing on his face. The laws of this world are quite interesting. The war god's temple is already done. I just need to wait for the path of warriors to spread. There's no need to care about it anymore. Thinking of the law of order of this crystal wall system that he had just sensed, Liu became even more interested. With a flicker, Liu disappeared from sight. Although Liu had left, the changes that should have happened in the Red Moss Highlands were still happening. Rumble. With an earth-shattering sound, a huge blood-red brilliance rushed out from the newly constructed blood-red temple. With a heaven-shaking roar and a flash of blood-red light, a muscular man more than 1,000 meters tall appeared in the air, his entire body rippling with muscles. He wielded a massive axe and roared at the heavens. What's that? Over there, this massive commotion had already alarmed everyone on the Red Moss Highlands. One by one, the burly men picked up their heavy weapons and rushed towards the place where the strange phenomenon was coming from with serious expressions on their faces. To these warriors, this was their home, their land. No matter how powerful the enemy they were about to face was, there was no way out. Bang, bang, bang. With heavy footsteps, the closest warriors had already arrived at the source of the phenomenon. This place, the site of the towering blood-red temple and that massive and mighty figure in the light, left all the warriors dumbstruck. Red Moss Mountain has become a temple? What in the world is this? Although the warriors were shocked, they still tightly gripped their weapons and puffed out their chests, not taking a single step back. Warriors of the Red Moss Highlands. The massive figure in the air glanced down at the warriors of the Red Moss Highlands, then raised the massive axe in his hand and loudly proclaimed, "Boiling hot blood that never ceases, firm beliefs that never yield. The earth strengthens your body, the flames ignites your anger, the metal sharpens your sword. Let the people of the world feel the strength of a warrior. In the name of the war god, the warriors who shed their blood will receive my protection." As the mighty proclamation echoed through the world, the figure in the blood-red brilliance gradually faded away, and the red light that filled the sky retreated back into the blood-red temple. War God. Hearing this voice and seeing the three glowing words, War God Temple, above the blood-red palace, the warriors' hearts were in turmoil. This is the temple of the war god? In a land of warriors like the Red Moss Highlands, although there wasn't a clear god of war, every warrior would pray in their hearts before they set out for battle, even if they didn't know who they were praying to. Boom, boom, boom. The massive door in front of the palace slowly opened with a heavy rumbling sound. A power that could change the world was displayed in front of everyone. There were no tall statues in the hall as he had guessed. Instead, There were only towering stone tablets in the hall. Basic swordsmanship, offensive swordsmanship, assassination swordsmanship, crescent slash, blazing swordsmanship, Sunchasser swordsmanship. Swordsmanship after swordsmanship was inscribed on the stone steels. Besides words, there were also detailed diagrams and explanations. Were God blessings? The warriors of the Red Moss Highlands were stunned by this sight. They hurriedly put down their weapons and respectfully kowtowed to the war god temple. Busy. The moment these warriors knelt down, a red light whizzed out and enveloped all the warriors. This is the war god's blessings. Every warrior felt a vast amount of vitality flowing through their bodies. The countless old wounds from years of war were instantly healed under the cleansing of this brilliance. More importantly, the complete legacy of a legendary warrior appeared in each warrior's mind. This was the safeguard that Liu had set up. The swordsmanship on the stone steels was naturally real, and there were no problems. However, the true core legacy, such as the breathing technique and runes, could only be obtained after kowtowing to the blessing. If it was a magus who came with their pride of being number one in the world, they would definitely not kowtow to the war god temple. This way, the Magi would not discover the problem with the warrior legacy in a short period of time. By the time they discovered it, it would be too late. Let the world feel the power of a warrior. The warriors of the Red Moss Highlands raised the weapons in their hands and shouted to the heavens. Where are the recommendations? Where are the monthly tickets? Where are the rewards? Come more fiercely. Chapter 472. The Laws of This World. After leaving the Red Moss Highlands, Liu casually found a mountain to sit on. He raised his head to look at the sky, feeling pleasantly surprised. I originally thought that there was nothing in this world that could catch my eye. I didn't expect there to be such good stuff. Liu recalled the system's prompt. Any world chosen by the system has resources that are beneficial to the host's growth. As expected, it's extremely beneficial to my growth. Liu used the power of yin and yang to construct a sturdy law for the war god shrine. This action gave him an unexpected discovery. When the yin and yang origin of order reconstructed the law, the origin of order intersected with the origin of this crystal wall system, producing a resonance. This world is made up of countless planes. Among the countless planes, there are two cores. One is the Magus world, the other is the world of gods. These two cores represent the two origins of this crystal wall system. Recalling the moment when the origins intersected, the information Liu felt was very interesting. Plane wills? There's actually such a thing? The plane wills of the Magus world represent the origin of matter. The plane wills of the world of gods represent the origin of order. This is really interesting. From what Liu had sensed earlier, these two plane wills had fallen into a deep slumber. From the information he sensed at the moment of contact, these two plane wills had fiercely fought before. Both plane wills want to devour each other, fusing matter and order, thus achieving a plane upgrade. Liu smiled and shook his head. What I hate the most is plane wills. These things shouldn't have consciousness. Thinking of this, Liu opened his arms and raised his head. That's why, in the name of the Burning Legion, this world will definitely be destroyed. At this point, Liu had already determined the fundamental goal of coming to this world. If I want to continue improving my two great origins of matter and order, I need to continuously analyze the origins of various worlds, digest and absorb them, and thus improve my origin. Liu had already determined his future path of cultivation. From Xianwang Qi to Yin and Yang Qi, from Yin and Yang Qi to Chaos Qi. Return to the origin, trace back to the origin of the world. This was Liu's path. Therefore, the two origins of this crystal wall system are worth my attention. Liu chuckled. Then let's have a good game. To have any ideas about the planar will, one must first understand the planar will. Where do the rules of the world manifest themselves most clearly? They were the cultivators of this world. The power of a cultivator represents the most fundamental law of this world. Liu is currently in the Magus plane. On the other side of the crystal wall system, there was a plane of gods. If he wanted to play this game, he would need to activate another cheat in the world of gods. However, in order to go to the world of gods, he had to first get Julian on the right track. We can't let Julian wander around anymore. We have to get him to the gathering place of the wizards on the west coast as soon as possible. Now, this place is a complete desert of magic. Liu had an idea in his mind, and a new task appeared in Udian's system. Main mission, the path of a magus. Mission description, this country is a magical desert. To grow faster, you have to go to the gathering place of the wizards. Mission hint, the acolytes of the Slan Kingdom definitely know the gathering place of the wizards. When Udian arrived at the border between the Ruden Kingdom and the Slan Kingdom, a system prompt sounded in his mind. Main mission? Looking at this so-called main mission, Udian smiled. This mission is just what I want. From information he had obtained from King Ruden, any acolyte that appeared in these kingdoms was already a top-notch existence. In such a place, there was definitely no way to increase one's strength quickly. Is this the rhythm of leaving the novice village? Udian grabbed the rose's thorn and nimbly flipped over a large tree. He looked up and observed the fortress in front of him. This was a huge fortress at the border. The Slan Kingdom was ambitious and wanted to attack the Ruden Kingdom, so they had amassed a large number of troops in this fortress. All right, for these small kingdoms, having a few thousand knights was already a huge military force. What's the situation in this fortress? Udian stood on the treetop and looked up at the fortress. He could only see groups of patrolling soldiers, but he could not see what was going on in the fortress. If I can know the layout of the fortress... the system seems to have a map function, right? Udian's heart skipped a beat. He quickly opened the system interface in his mind and found the map function. Just like in the game, I still need to step on the map. Udian looked at the map. The route from the Ruden Kingdom to the Slan Kingdom was all lit up. He already understood the function of the map. There's also a mini-map function. This is much more convenient. Udian opened the mini-map. Sure enough, he saw the complete structure of the castle on the mini-map. On the mini-map, there are also some red dots. These dots must be the enemy. I remember in the game, there's a function to show the target's level, strength, and health bar. Since it was going to be a battle, Julian had to be fully prepared. There really is such a function. After searching through the interface, Udian found the function to show the target's level, strength, and health bar. He immediately activated this function. This is much more convenient. Udian smiled and quietly slipped down from the tree, sneaking towards the fortress. Although apprentices are the strongest force in these kingdoms, it doesn't mean that every apprentice can fight a few thousand knights alone. Even with my current strength, I can't fight a few thousand knights alone. Udian held his breath and quietly walked to the edge of the fortress. He looked up at the wall and saw the patrolling soldiers walk past. Udian began to move. Jump! Udian activated the jump rune and leaped up. In the blink of an eye, he had flipped over the wall and entered the fortress. Slan Kingdom's foot soldiers. Level 1. He looked up and glanced at the patrolling soldiers. In Udian's eyes, the soldiers' identities, levels, and health bars were displayed above their heads. I really want to play a game, but do I have to solo a dungeon now? Udian slowly pulled out the rose's thorn and sneaked into the fortress along the corner of the wall. Even if he wanted to solo a dungeon, there was no need to clear the small monsters after defeating the boss. This small fortress in the fortress must be the location of the boss monster. But is an elite monster or a boss monster? Udian activated the Gale rune and the Jump rune and sneaked into the small fortress in the same way. If only I had the stealth skill of a bandit. This place is perfect for a bandit to sneak in. Udian jumped into the courtyard and rushed to the edge of the house from the shadow of the green belt. Once again, he used the Jump rune to jump to the balcony on the second floor and flipped into the room from the balcony. The slaughter is about to begin. Udian held the rose's thorn, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He felt a sense of excitement in his heart, as if he was exploring a dungeon. Where are the recommendations? Where are the monthly tickets? Where are the rewards? Come on. Come on fiercely. Chapter 473. Ah, who is it? Udian was about to start his killing spree, but he did not expect an accident to happen. Just as he was about to open the door and leave, the door suddenly opened before his hand could touch the door handle. A man in a noble's robe appeared at the door and bumped into Udian. Kill! Since he was exposed, Udian did not waste any more time. He immediately stabbed with his sword. A dark golden light flashed, and the three-edged sword pierced through the man's heart. This man is a noble of the Rudin Kingdom. When Udian saw this man, he saw the system's information. Noble of the Rudin Kingdom, level 1. More importantly, this man's name was not red, so there was no red dot on the minimap. A noble of the Rudin Kingdom actually appeared in the border castle of the Slan Kingdom. Haha, spies are everywhere. Of course, Udian did not have the heart to care about this. Boom! The guards in the castle were instantly alarmed. Teams of warriors in heavy armor and holding great swords and axes rushed out of the castle with heavy footsteps. I was planning to sneak in and backstab, but I didn't expect to have to resort to brute force. Udian curled his lips and raised Rose's thorn. In this situation, he had to end the battle quickly. Otherwise, the longer he delayed, the more people would come. Under the siege of thousands of knights, no matter how strong Udian was, he would definitely be finished. Stab! Julian stomped on the ground. The ground shook slightly. Boom! Julian's entire body was like an arrow that had just left the bow. He rushed out with a whistling sound. Bang! The rose's thorn in his hand exploded, and there was a burst of sound. The surging wind whistled and pierced through everything in front of him. Puff, puff, puff. A total of 10 heavily armored warriors were directly pierced through by this sudden thrust. Ah! Udian's tyrannical strength shocked the other armored warriors who rushed over. They just surrounded Udian, and some of them shrank back. Knight's battle technique? An assassin from the Rudin Kingdom? You have some skills. At this moment, behind the heavy armor warrior, a tall figure with a head full of blonde hair, wearing golden armor and holding a door greatsword, like a lion, parted the crowd and walked up. I'm Slan Kingdom's Golden Lion Grand Knight, Ryan. Rudin's assassin, your strength is worthy of my respect. I'll give you a chance to fight head-on. Grand Knight Ryan raised his greatsword and pointed it at Julian. Come on, let me see what you've got. Grand Knight of the Slan Kingdom, Ryan, level 3 elite. His title is Golden Lion. Seeing the information above Ryan's head, Udian raised his eyebrows in surprise. Level 3 elite? How is this level calculated? Can you display the target's attributes? Target attributes: Strength 5, Vitality 7, Agility 2, Spirit 1, Magic 0. The rule to determine the level is the average of all the attributes. The average of the 5 attributes is 3, so it's considered level 3. Udian was speechless about the game system's level division. This level obviously couldn't accurately represent one's strength. 5 times the strength of an ordinary person, 7 times the vitality of an ordinary person. Grand Knights are indeed tyrannical. Udian's heart trembled slightly. My current combat experience is still very rusty. I definitely have no chance of winning against an experienced knight in swordsmanship. Udian looked up at Ryan and shook his head with a smile. I'm not as good as you in swordsmanship, but the rose thorn in his hand shook slightly. Udian instantly activated Gale, Outburst, and Stab. He also used his magic to activate the elemental rune Storm. The Gale rune increased Udian's speed, the Outburst rune doubled Udian's strength, and the Stab rune made Udian shoot out like a crossbow. Of course, these were not the key to defeating the enemy. Even if Udian's strength doubled, it was still far from Grand Knight Ryan's. Even if Udian's speed was very fast, with Ryan's vitality and heavy armor, normal physical attacks could hardly hurt him. However, after Udian activated the elemental rune Storm with his magic, the result was completely different. Woo! Udian's figure rushed out, and the rose thorn in his hand burst out a whistling wind. The storm airflow swirled rapidly, stirring up a storm on the long sword. This was not an ordinary airflow, nor was it a strong wind brought about by an attack. It was elemental power. Under the crazy, swirling airflow, everything in front of it was smashed by the storm elements. Wizard, Grand Knight Ryan's face was full of horror as he saw the giant sword in his hand shatter into pieces in the storm. The heavy armor on his chest was instantly shattered, and the violent wind elements pierced a huge hole in his chest. Plop! Grand Knight Ryan fell to the ground before he could finish his words. What was even more shocking was that Grand Knight Ryan's body, which had just fallen to the ground, disappeared in an instant. This strange scene caused everyone's hearts to be filled with horror. At first, when Udian killed the Black Wolf, he was also a little surprised that the Black Wolf's body disappeared in an instant. However, when he thought of things like experience and monster respawn, he found an explanation that he thought made sense. He could understand it, but the others could not. Ah, Magus! Magus! The terror of Magi was deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Seeing that Udian had killed the brave and invincible Grand Knight Ryan with a single strike, the surrounding heavy-armored warriors retreated in fear. He's just an apprentice Magus. What kind of Magus is he? At this moment, an old man with a head full of white hair and a face full of wrinkles walked out from behind the heavy-armored warriors. He held a palm-sized bronze badge in his hand. Surrender. Swear allegiance to the Slan Kingdom. With your strength, you will receive the courtesy you deserve. The white-haired old man raised the bronze badge and looked at Udian coldly. Otherwise, even if you're an apprentice Magus, I will not hold back. Even if you have a powerful magical weapon, you have already activated it once. With your strength, you can only activate it once a day at most. As for me, the white-haired old man pointed the bronze badge at Udian. I have not used my magical weapon today. Without any magical equipment, you're no match for me with just rank 0 spells. Magical weapon? Is this the strongest attack of an apprentice Magus? Udian heard the white-haired old man's words and saw the words, rank 3 apprentice Magus, above his head. He had an idea in his mind. The elemental energy of the storm rune that I activated just now was not as powerful as my shadow arrow. This means that the power of the shadow arrow is stronger than a rank 0 spell. Udian thought of the rank 3 apprentice Bane from the Rudin Kingdom. After seeing the power of the spell, he immediately recognized him as an official Magus. This gave Udian even more confidence. Rank 0 spell? Udian's lips curled into a smile. A ball of shadow light spun rapidly in his hand. Then try the spell of mine. Shadow arrow. The ball of shadow light flew out of his hand like an arrow. Magus. Magus? The white-haired old man's face was full of shock. He hurriedly raised the bronze badge and activated a light screen, wanting to block Udian's shadow arrow. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the light screen instantly shattered, and the shadow energy violently blasted onto the white-haired apprentice. The corrosive power of the shadow energy exploded, and the white-haired apprentice instantly turned into a pile of decaying corpses. Then, the pile of decaying corpses also disappeared in an instant. System notification. The random mission King Rudin's request has been completed. The host is leveled up. The current level is level 2. The host is leveled up. The current level is level 3. After completing the mission and defeating 2 elite monsters, Udian instantly reached level 3. Level 3. There's a new spell to learn. Udian was very satisfied with the result of this dungeon run. Where are the recommendations? Where are the monthly tickets? Where are the rewards? Come on harder. Chapter 474. Sorcerer. Seeing that Julian had killed the white-haired old man with a single spell, the surrounding heavy armor warriors were even more terrified. Scram! Julian roared and secretly activated the flame rune. He waved the rose's thorn in his hand, and a raging flame swept out like a fire dragon. Ah, in this world where sorcerers controlled everything, the terror of sorcerers was deeply ingrained in people's hearts. No warrior dared to go against a sorcerer. As soon as the raging flame appeared, The heavy armor warriors screamed in horror and fled in panic. They did not have the courage to fight against Julian. Main mission: the Path of Sorcerer. Initial mission completed. After defeating the Sorcerer Apprentice of the Slan Kingdom, you have obtained information about a sorcerer's gathering place. Was the sorcerer's land called the West Coast like? System notification: you have obtained basic meditation, level 0 spell, drowsy spell, level 0 spell, touch of weakness, sorcerer's equipment, bronze badge. Host is leveled up to level 3. New spell, corrosion has been activated. A series of system notifications rang out in Udian's mind. These notifications made Udian feel a little happy. The rewards this time are not small. Julian smiled and activated the leap and gale runes. His figure was like a phantom as he instantly rushed out of the border fortress and disappeared into the vast forest. The fortress was not a place to stay for long. Julian had to find a safe place to organize the rewards from this dungeon. In the vast forest, Julian found a big tree and leaped up to the treetops to organize the rewards. I've leveled up twice in a row. My attributes have increased greatly. After opening the attributes interface, Julian saw that his strength, vitality, and dexterity had all increased by 1 point. His spirit had increased by 5 points. Strength 2, 5, vitality 2, 5, dexterity 3, 4, spirit 12, magic 12. After equipping the Rose's Thorn, Julian's spirit attribute had reached 12 points. He could cast shadow arrows 12 times, corrosion 12 times, and 44 level 0 spells. If combined with the swordsmanship of a secret swordsman, Julian could easily kill a team of Grand Knights. This was the reason why sorcerers were superior in this world. There are 3 more books and a bronze badge in the storage space. This should be the apprentice adept's belongings. Seeing these things, Udian was pleasantly surprised. The game system has an automatic pickup function. This is really convenient. I don't even need to search the corpse. These 3 books were naturally the basic meditation technique and the 2 rank 0 spells. Basic meditation technique. A basic skill for apprentice adepts to increase their spirit and magic power. Do you want to learn? When Udian focused on the book, the system prompt rang in his mind again. Automatic learning? I thought I needed to read by myself. This is very convenient. Julian's eyes lit up, and he quickly learned all 3 books. Basic meditation technique. Through meditation, he would construct the basic witchcraft runes in his mind, increasing his spirit and magic power. Meditation effect. Recovers 1 mana every hour. Slowly increase the upper limit of my spiritual power and magic power. Hypnosis. A level 0 spell. Spell effect. Causes a target with a lower mental strength than the caster to fall unconscious. Touch of weakness. A level 0 spell. Instant cast. Spell effect. Causes the target to fall into a weakened state. The spell effect is related to the caster's spiritual power and the target's constitution. The spell must be in contact with the target to be cast. After learning the 3 books, 3 new skills were added to Udian's skill interface. Basic meditation technique. The effect is very ordinary. The 2 instant spells were very useful, but this basic meditation technique was really bad. I hope I can find a better meditation technique in the West Coast Sorcerer Land. Leaving these 3 sorcerer skills aside, Udian focused on the new warlock skill, corrosion. Corrosion. Instant cast. Corrodes the target with shadow energy, causing the target to continuously suffer from shadow corrosion damage. This was a skill that could only be learned by a rank 3 warlock. Presumably, its power was much stronger than a level 0 spell. Then let's try the skill effect. Udian stretched out his hand, and a dark green ball of light flew out of his hand, hitting a huge mountain rock in front of him. Rustle. A white smoke billowed up, and a strong, sour smell filled the air. In a moment, this huge mountain rock was corroded into a pile of residue by the strong acid. As expected, it's tyrannical. Udian saw the effect of this corrosion and was surprised and happy. With my current strength, I don't need to be afraid of going to the West Coast Sorcerer Land. Udian stood on top of a tree and raised his head to look to the west. If I want to go to the West Coast, I can only go to Luya Port. He jumped down from the tree and rushed towards Luya Port in the west. Answer Plains. This was a vast grassland in the west of the continent. It was the only road to Luya Port. Awoo. In the night, mournful wolf howls rose and fell one after another. Under the dim starlight, pairs of dark green eyes made one's hair stand on end. Leyland, this pack of wolves. On the plains, a dozen carriages formed a simple camp. There was a bonfire in the campsite, and a group of teenagers were talking around it. Hearing the wolf howls, a chestnut-haired teenager looked nervously at a dark brown-haired teenager beside him. He seemed to be nervous about the wolf howls. George, pick up your sword. I have a premonition that these wolves are very dangerous. The dark brown-haired teenager called Leyland raised his head and looked at the distant night sky. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the crossblade, his expression extremely nervous. Chih! A teenager beside them heard their conversation and sneered disdainfully. With that bit of courage, go to the West Coast Sorcerer Academy to study is a waste. You might as well go back early. Ollie, what do you mean? The brown-haired George roared and glared fiercely at the teenager who mocked him, as if he wanted to teach him a lesson. George, don't bother about him. Those wolves are... Before Leyland could finish speaking, another mournful wolf howl sounded from all directions. Oh, a mournful, desolate, and bloodthirsty wolf howl rang out. Oh, in the wilderness, the wolf howls were like waves, rising and falling one after another. Shadows of black wolves galloped over. These huge black wolves were huge, like calves. Their bloodthirsty and violent aura was breathtaking. The scavenger wolves are attacking. Acolytes, return to the carriages immediately. Prepare for battle. At this moment, a few tall figures wearing heavy armor and black robes pulled out their large swords and faced the wolf pack. Run. Oh, wait for me. The sudden attack of the wolf pack scared the souls out of the youths surrounding the bonfire out of their bodies as they fled in a sorry state. Running away is seeking your own death. The teenager called Leyland calmly pulled out the crossblade in his hand. Ah! In front of them, a young girl screamed. A black shadow pounced on her body and pushed her to the ground. The wolf's fangs bared as it bit the young girl's neck. Battle is the only way to survive. Leyland pulled out his long sword with a clang, and the bright light of the sword flashed like lightning. Cross-slash. With a slash of the sword, a huge scavenger wolf was beheaded on the spot. However, facing the endless amount of scavenger wolves, even if a few black-robed Grand Knights tried their best to stop them, the destruction of the carriage was inevitable. Unless there's a miracle otherwise. We're dead meat. George raised his sword and stood back to back with Leyland. Leyland, it's an honor to fight alongside you. Miracle. Leyland raised his long sword, but sighed in his heart. I'm afraid that miracles are hard to come by. Rumble. At this moment, in the distant darkness, a raging flame surged up like a fire dragon, engulfing the area like a raging tide. Woo-woo. Engulfed by this raging flame, countless scavenger wolves were turned into ashes. The remaining scavenger wolves trembled in fear, wailing as they fled in a sorry state. Is that a magus? Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, a figure wearing a dark red robe slowly stepped out from the raging flames, his tyrannical aura causing everyone to be shocked. Where are the recommendations? Where are the monthly tickets? Where are the rewards? Come on, come at me fiercely. Chapter 475. Random Task. Save the Wizard Apprentices. Task completed. When the dire wolves scattered and fled, the system prompt sounded in Udian's mind. It was followed by another level up. It's finally over. Udian exhaled a long breath and withdrew Rose's thorn. Udian was on his way to the port of Luya. Ever since he stepped into the Ansur grassland, it had been a nightmare. Udian, who had wanted to rush to the port of Luya as soon as possible, ignored the dire wolves on the grassland and hurried on. But some things were so helpless. If you didn't want to provoke them, they would provoke you. Wolves bullied the weak and were afraid of strong. If you didn't provoke them, they would think that you were easy to bully. So, Udian could only kill all the way. However, the number of direwolves on the vast Ansur grassland was simply uncountable. After killing a group, another group came. Along the way, Udian's swordsmanship had reached the intermediate level, and his warlock level had unexpectedly increased by 1 level. Originally, these direwolves were at most level 1 or 2, and Udian didn't have much experience killing them. But no matter how little experience he had, he couldn't afford to kill too many. After the unexpected level up, Udian's strength had increased again. After his swordsmanship had reached the intermediate level, it was easier to kill the direwolves. So, Udian simply killed all the wolves he saw along the way. In this way, the speed of his progress was a little faster. When Udian arrived at the camp of the Wizard Academy's apprentices, he encountered another pack of wolves. The system also gave him a random quest. The task was experience, and Udian naturally wouldn't let it go. He activated the flame rune and continuously consumed 3 points of magic power to release a huge fire dragon, which wiped out the direwolves in one fell swoop. Finally, level 5. Udian's heart was filled with joy. A level 5 warlock had a new skill, Summon Imp. The imp summoned was born with a talent spell, Flame Arrow. This meant that Udian had another fire wizard by his side. At this stage, this power was already very strong. More importantly, pets could level up with their masters. The more powerful Julian became, the more powerful his pets became. And this was just the imp. After Udian's strength improved, he could also summon void walkers, succubi, hellhounds, doom sentinels, and hellfire. In the future, Udian's enemies would not only have to face Udian, but also these powerful summoned creatures. Lord Sorcerer. At this time, a black-robed Grand Knight walked to Udian and bowed. "Thank you for your help, Master Wizard." "Yes." Julian withdrew his sword and nodded slightly. "Greetings, Lord Magus." The apprentices, who had just survived the disaster, saluted Julian excitedly. "So these are the students of the Sorcerer Academy?" Julian glanced at the apprentices who were saluting him. Apart from that, Leyland, whose attributes were higher than an ordinary person's, which surprised Julian, the rest of the apprentices were ordinary. "Take advantage of the fact that the wolves have dispersed and get on your way." Julian didn't greet the others. He turned around and left after saying goodbye to the black-robed knight. "So, that's a sorcerer? That's amazing." "Yes, Lord Magus is too strong." In the camp, the young boys and girls who had just survived the disaster raised their heads and looked in Julian's direction. Everyone was talking at once. Their eyes were shining, as if they were looking forward to being as strong as Julian in the future. Sorcerers are indeed powerful. The scene of the monstrous flames sweeping across the sky had deeply shocked Leyland. His desire to embark on the path of becoming a sorcerer was even stronger now. Julian left. He didn't have any contact with these young boys. He didn't know that he had just brushed shoulders with a future big shot. Of course, even if he knew, Julian wouldn't care. A future big shot? Was he as powerful as the Burning Legion? Julian didn't care, but Liu couldn't help but care. Leyland? Leyland Farrell? This person is also here. The system on Udian's body immediately scanned all the information around Udian. When the system found Leyland, it immediately sent this information to Liu. There are actually 2 main characters in this world. One is Angeli, the other is Leyland. Are they in the same world? Liu had transmigrated to several worlds, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. The 2 Magus worlds had merged into one. "System, what's going on?" Unable to understand the reason, Liu directly asked the system. In the planar system, worlds with the same origin will automatically merge. The system gave the answer. Is that so? The 2 Magus worlds have merged into one? Or there are other Magus worlds of the same kind that have merged into one? Liu blinked. An indescribable light flashed in his eyes. If that's the case, then this world is even more interesting. The Magus worlds with the same origin would automatically merge into one. Then what about the world of gods? Could have merged as well? If it's really merged, then this world will become much more complicated. Liu smiled and didn't mind it at all. My goal is to obtain the planar origin laws of the Magus world and the world of gods, and thus allow my own substance and order origins to grow. As long as it doesn't affect my fundamental goal, you can do whatever you want. The core of the Magus world was the Magus continent. The countries that Julian was currently in could only be considered as islands outside the Magus continent. The real, flourishing land of the Magus civilization was in the central region of the Magus continent. The Magus world is quite interesting here. Then let's go to the Magus continent to take a look. Liu smiled as he got up and strolled towards the west. With a step, the space fluctuated, and Liu's figure disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already on the other side of the ocean. As expected, the elemental energy of heaven and earth, the elemental particles, is much denser than in the Rooting Kingdom. Liu took a deep breath and extended a finger. Various colors of elemental light flowed on his fingertip. The Magus world's origin is the origin of matter. It's clearly shown here. Looking at the elemental light flowing on his fingertip, Liu had an epiphany. The path of a Magus was completely displayed in front of him. The path of a Magus is the path of the elements. Spiritual force fuses with the elements, analyzing the elemental laws, fusing with one's own will, treading on one's own path, and thus controlling the origin. At Liu's current level, he had a basic meditation technique and could feel the changes in elemental energy between heaven and earth. It was very easy for him to understand the principles of Magus cultivation. If this path can be walked to the extreme, it's not impossible for one to reach the peak. However, there is the existence of the planar consciousness. It can't possibly allow an existence that transcends the plane. Therefore, the magi of this world are actually slaves to the planar consciousness. Of course, to the planar consciousness, living beings born from heaven and earth should not serve the heavens and earth, conquer other planes, and plunder their origin. Finally, defeat the world of gods, and allow the planar consciousness of the Magus world to fuse with the origin of the gods and advance. The world of gods on the other side must have the same idea, right? However, while they were plotting against each other, Liu was also plotting against them. Chapter 476. I'm level 5 now. I can learn to summon a ghost. After leaving the apprentice camp, Yudian opened the game interface and planned to learn the new summon a ghost skill. Now that I've reached level 5, my attributes have increased greatly. On the attribute interface, his strength, constitution, and dexterity had increased by 1 point, and his spirit and magic had increased by 5 points. Strength 3, 5, constitution 3, 5, dexterity 4, 4, spirit 17, magic 17. With Yudian's current attributes, even if he didn't use spells, his physical attributes were not worse than the average knight. My attributes increase by 4 points per level. Strength, constitution, and dexterity increase by 0. 5 points per level, and spirit by 2. 5 points. Magic was an attribute that came with the increase of spirit. It didn't need to be added as it would automatically increase with the increase of spirit. The first time he leveled up, all his attributes increased by 1 point. Was it because his body was too weak at that time? Yudian thought about it and couldn't figure out the reason, so he ignored it. Learn to summon a ghost spell. With a touch of his mind, the summon a ghost icon on the spell interface was activated. The steps, incantations, and gestures of summoning a ghost were all imprinted in Yudian's mind. It's much more complicated than in the game. According to the requirements of the summon a ghost spell, Yudian chanted the incantation and drove his magic. A mysterious circle with flowing blue light condensed around him. Gurgle, gurgle. A strange gurgle sounded. A 2-foot-tall ghost with dark red skin and sharp fangs and claws appeared in front of Yudian. The moment the ghost was summoned from the circle, an inexplicable connection was connected to Yudian's mind. Mind command. Through this mental connection, Yudian quickly understood the function of this connection. Through this mental connection, Yudian could directly give orders to the ghost. Ghost, aim at the grass in front of you and cast a flame arrow. Yudian wanted to see the ghost's ability and immediately gave an order. Gurgle. The ghost screamed and waved its hand to cast a flame. The raging flame was like a rocket. Boom! It hit the grass in front of him. Bang! The flame violently exploded and smashed the grass in front of him into a scorched black pit with a diameter of 2 meters. The flame arrow is so powerful. Imp's flame arrow was an innate ability. As long as his body wasn't so weak that he couldn't move, he could use flame arrow. His endurance was even better than Julian's. A single flame arrow was already so powerful. How could this brat be so strong? Julian was dumbfounded. Well, Yudian's system was made by Li Yu. Naturally, all the skills were made by Li Yu. It was very easy for Li Yu, who had mastered the power of origin, to create some spell effects. However, the source of the summoned creature had to be provided. Of course, Li Yu didn't have any warlocks, imps, void walkers, succubi, and the like. Therefore, he could only summon these creatures himself. Referring to the body structure of the spiriters and the demons in the mortal world, Li Yu directly used my Liang's soul and vitality as materials to create the so-called little ghost for Yurian. Ma Liang, a miserable immortal from the lower realm, was taken apart by Li Yu just like that. Imp is very strong. Not bad. Julian was very satisfied with Imp's performance. He took Imp all the way to Port Luya. With Imp following him, Julian didn't have to do anything. If there was any movement, Imp would just shoot a flame arrow. Any problems would be solved. The rest of the journey was very smooth. It took another 3 days for Julian to walk out of the vast Answer Plains and arrive at Port Luya. Although Port Luya was called a port, it was actually a bustling city. Surrounded by tall, gray-white walls, it was a bustling scene. Compared to Ruden's capital, it was many times stronger. As the only port connecting to the wizard continent, this place gathered countless nobles with noble bloodlines. The so-called noble bloodline was actually a family that had produced a magus. Having a wizard's bloodline was the origin of noble bloodlines. Kid, come here. Hurry up and pay the gate tax. When Yudian arrived at the gate, a knight in heavy armor roared and pointed his spear at Yudian. Gate tax. Hearing the gate tax, Yudian was a little unhappy. He slightly frowned. Wasn't the so-called gate tax just a toll? In Julian's fictional memory, the so-called toll was something he abhorred. Gulp! Imp, who was following Julian, could feel the anger in Julian's heart. A ball of flame appeared in his hand. Wizard, wizard, ah! Spare me, sir. Seeing this, the guards at the gate were scared out of their wits. They quickly knelt down and kowtowed, begging for mercy. Imp, don't move. The anger in Imp's heart almost made him attack. Julian quickly stopped Imp's actions. Although he had become the so-called Burning Lord, although this world will be destroyed, as a game nerd, he didn't have the mentality to destroy all living things in the world. Julian still had a long way to go to become a true burning overlord. Thank you, sir. The guards at the gate wiped the cold sweat off their foreheads and respectfully welcomed Julian into the city. A moment later, the news of a wizard arriving at Port Luya had spread among the upper-class nobles of the city. How powerful was an official wizard? These families that had produced an official wizard were naturally very clear, and they were also clear about the temperament of wizards. For existences like adepts, cold-blooded would be a compliment. They could be described as cruel and merciless. Sir, Marquis Orson, Duke Lion, Prince Carson, and the others have sent you a gift. Julian had just rented a place to stay in the city and settled down when the landlord ran over, sweating profusely, and reported to Julian with a fawning expression. Accept it. Tell them that I've accepted the gift. I don't want anyone to disturb me. During this period of travel, Julian had also learned what kind of existence a wizard was. Naturally, he would put on airs. Yes. Hearing Julian's order, the landlord ran out of the room again. These so-called nobles don't actually want to use this gift to curry favor with me. I'm afraid they just want to form a good relationship. As long as I don't find trouble with them, they'll be satisfied. Julian thought for a moment and understood the noble's thoughts. After all, it wasn't rare to capture a descendant of a Magus bloodline and conduct bloodline research. How can I have the time to care about them? I'm just waiting for the ship to arrive to the wizard continent. Then I'll leave. Julian opened the window and looked out at the port filled with shadows of sails. The wizard continent, the land of wizards on the west coast. What is it like? Chapter 477. Has the ship to the sorcerer continent arrived? 3 days later, Udian stepped onto a large ship that had no sails or oars. It had an ancient appearance, but it exuded a mysterious aura. It's actually a ship built on the back of a sea demon whale. Udian boarded the ship as a sorcerer, and then went all the way to the west coast of the sorcerer continent, embarking on the burning overlord journey. Udian has already rushed to the sorcerer continent. My plan is about to begin. Liu turned his head to look at the central region of the sorcerer continent. I have to fully understand the sorcerer world's laws and understand the origin power of this sorcerer world. The central continent's floating cities library is worth a visit. After Liu came to this world, he understood his future path. That was to constantly analyze the laws of various worlds and enrich his own system. Gather the origin laws of countless worlds. Go from complex to simple and return to the origin. Trace his own path of cultivation back to the origin and trace it back to the origin. Xianhuang Qi, Yin and Yang Qi, and finally turn into Chaos Qi. Before the primordial chaos, before the chaos, the beginning of heaven and earth. This was the beginning of the origin. But why does this path look like the three pure ones? Chaos was the beginning of the origin. Yin and Yang were supreme, and Xianhuang was heaven-reaching. Liu shrugged his shoulders. Three pure ones into one. Will I finally become Pangu? Of course. Liu is also very clear. With his current realm, even if he also attained the Tao from Xianhuang, Yin and Yang, and Chaos, the gap between him and the three pure ones was too great. Primordial chaos, Chaos Daluo. The void system, the root of creation, the origin of gods, the origin of heaven and earth, the mother of all things, and the origin of the five elements. The Daluo Tao was the root of heaven and earth, the origin of all things, the origin of all worlds, and the boundless space-time. Although Liu worked hard in this direction, tracing the origin, his current level could only be considered as the first step in tracing the origin. In all worlds, only I am supreme. Liu's path had long been clear. However, all along, Liu had used external means to control the worlds he transmigrated to. For example, the city stronghold or the various legions. At this moment, Liu was suddenly enlightened. He controlled the Tao of the myriad worlds. Aside from external means, what was more important was his own great Tao. I hope that when I attain Bodhi, all living beings in the myriad of worlds in the heavens will receive immeasurable light, immeasurable longevity, and immeasurable blessings. Recalling the description in the Buddhist scriptures, Liu realized that this path had long been laid out in front of him. Divine splendor spread throughout the 3,000 realms and shook the heavens for billions of years. This was the foundation. This was the foundation. With a single glance, he could see through the 9 underworlds, and with a single thought, he could roam the boundless universe. All the worlds in the universe are within my Tao. Therefore, by collecting the laws of heaven and earth of the myriad worlds, I was able to conclude my own Tao of origin. This is the best way for me to achieve chaos and attain primeval. Liu already had a clear understanding in his heart. There was already a clear path to his path of controlling the myriad worlds. The laws of the sorcerer world must be dealt with. Liu's figure flashed, and a wave of ripples silently blended into the world. It was as if his entire person had merged into the space. So close, yet so far. He took a light step and crossed the near distance, but he had already reached the end of the world. This was Liu's newly comprehended Tao of the laws of heaven and earth. With the two great origins of matter and order, his own laws interfered with heaven and earth. There was no difference between the near distance and the end of the world in front of Liu. This was not the teleportation gate that Liu often used in the past, nor did he open any space channel. He merely plucked the strings of the laws, and everything came naturally. Boom! Crack! Thunderous rumbles could be heard. The lightning that filled the sky was like a vast ocean, forming a sea of lightning in the sky. Surrounded by this sea of lightning, a huge sky city floated in the sky. Densely packed ruins covered the entire sky city. Endless spiritual light circulated, and a colorful halo enveloped the sky above the city like a brilliant rainbow. Of course, this was not a rainbow, but the elemental spiritual light revealed by a huge sorcerer ray that could annihilate all things. This is the holy land of the sorcerer continent, the Sky City. In Liu's eyes, this huge city floating in the sea of lightning in front of him was actually a large-scale sorcerer magic weapon. The refining method is also quite extraordinary. In Liu's eyes, the refining method of this Sky City was still very crude. It was completely pieced together by individual parts, just like an assembled machine. It was precisely because of this that this refining method could refine magic weapons that exceeded one's own strength by piecing them together. The value of the Sky City to me lies in the large library in the city. This large library, known as the Tower of Truth and the Hall of Knowledge, is the place with the most abundant information in the sorcerer world. Liu raised his eyes to look at the Sky City. Seeing the towering white tower in the center of the city, Liu nodded in satisfaction. With this information, I can analyze most of the laws of the sorcerer world. Liu flicked his sleeves and stepped into the sea of lightning, walking towards the Sky City. Boom! Crack! Thunderclaps boomed, and streaks of lightning flashed. This sea of lightning was the protection of the Sky City, and also its test. Only by passing through the sea of lightning would one have the qualifications to set foot in the Sky City. With the offensive power of the sea of lightning, only rank 4 Morningstar Magi could break through it and enter the Sky City. Magi below rank 4 could forget about it if they did not have tyrannical treasures. The Sea of Lightning? It's meaningless to me. Liu used the Xianhuang Qi to form the origin of materials, and the power of lightning was also under the control of the origin. Liu leisurely stepped through the Sea of Lightning as if he was taking a stroll, and entered the Sky City without a sound. There are actually living creatures in the Sea of Lightning? Thunder spirits? These creatures are quite interesting. Stepping on the ground of the Sky City, Liu turned his head and swept a glance at the Sea of Lightning. Seeing the thunder spirits swimming in the sea of lightning like fish, a smile appeared on his face. Thunder spirits, life forms formed from lightning. This kind of energy life form is quite interesting. Liu had created a thunder dragon himself, and was naturally not unfamiliar with this kind of energy life form. Regarding the thunder soul, Liu's interest also ended here. Flicking his sleeves, he got up and walked forward leisurely. Among the pedestrians and countless magi, no one seemed to have discovered Liu's existence. With Liu's current strength, if he did not want others to see him, be it voidification, soul interference, or even directly casting illusions, there were many ways for him to do so. After a while, Liu arrived in front of the Tower of Truth without anyone noticing. Only truth is eternal. Knowledge is power. In front of the White Tower was a vast plaza. In this plaza, there were many lifelike statues. On the path leading to the White Tower, there were 2 lines of resplendent words inscribed on it. Knowledge is power? Liu looked up at the White Tower in front of him. I hope the knowledge stored here can satisfy me. Chapter 478. There's a weapon spirit in this library? Passing through the main road in the plaza, Liu arrived in front of a large door that looked like a Greek temple. Liu noticed that the entrance to the White Pagoda Library was wide open. There There was only a door frame and no guards. It was wide open for anyone to enter and exit. More importantly, Liu discovered that there was an existence similar to a weapon spirit in this Tower of Truth. This white pagoda is a huge spell formation. This so-called weapon spirit should be called a formation spirit. Liu raised his head and glanced at the large door. White rays of light illuminated the entire space, but it was not glaring. Instead, it was very gentle. Liu concealed his tracks and stood in front of the large door of the white pagoda. A few magi entering and exiting the white pagoda walked past Liu from time to time, but they did not discover Liu's existence. This Tower of Truth is probably the culmination of countless years of painstaking effort from countless magi. Entering the large door, there was a bright and large hall in front of him. In this vast space, it would not be crowded even if thousands of people were accommodated at the same time. Intelligent management and reading terminals? This is really interesting. What caught Liu's attention was that in the hall, there were hundreds of things that looked like ATMs. Transmitting data. Data transmission complete. On Liu's left, a magus was operating a terminal. That magus stood in front of a terminal, took out a blank crystal ball, and placed it on the terminal's interface. With a flash of light, countless data and information were transmitted into the crystal ball. I can still download it. Seeing this scene, Liu had a look of reminiscence on his face. Although it's not a computer, it does look a little similar. Liu swept a glance around the hall, and his soul silently swept past. The entire structure of the White Pagoda was presented in Liu's mind. There are a total of 7 levels. The first 3 levels have no restrictions and are open to any magus. However, downloading information requires a certain amount of magic crystals. From a 4th to the 6th level, one needs to verify their identity before they can enter. As for the 7th floor, almost no one has ever entered it. Liu hid his tracks, silently passed through the hall, and went up the stairs. He walked up the stairs leisurely. Needless to say, the first 3 levels were unimpeded. Identity verification was required for the 4th floor and above. However, the artifact spirit of the Tower of Truth couldn't even detect Liu's existence, so it naturally couldn't verify his identity. Starting from the 1st floor, Liu let the system scan and record the information of each floor as he walked. When Liu reached the entrance of the 7th floor, all the information on the first 6 floors was scanned by Liu. This 7th floor is quite interesting. Liu glanced at the 7th floor and found that the tightly shut door in the corridor was engraved with mysterious runes. A vast and majestic aura emanated from a rune. This aura was extremely profound and terrifying. Under the cover of this aura, it was as if he was directly facing the might of heaven and earth. According to the classification of magi in this world, rank 1 to 3 are the foundation, mainly to increase a magus spiritual force. From rank 4 to 6, a magus spiritual force and elemental essence merge into one, strengthening the foundation of the soul. At rank 7, they walk the path of laws. For example, water-type magi need to grasp the laws of water, and it's the same for other magi. Liu stretched out his hand and lightly brushed the runes on the door, silently stepping into the 7th floor. It really is laws. In the space of the 7th floor, there were only 2 or 3 rays of light drifting about in the air. It could be seen that information on law-type magi was extremely rare. Since I'm here, I can't let go of this information. Liu let the system scan the information on the laws contained in the 2 or 3 rays of light and record it into the database. At this point, the vast amount of information gathered by countless magi over the countless years on the Magus continent had all been swept clean by Liu. This information is merely information gathered after the war between the Magus world and the gods ended in mutual destruction. However, this information was already enough for Liu. Complete information on rank 1 to 7 magi, as well as information on spells and spells that were as numerous as the stars in the sky. Information on all sorts of herbs, minerals, strange beasts, other races, and other planes, as well as rich information on potions, runes, spell formations, and magical equipment. With this information, Liu could already conduct a complete and clear analysis of the entire power system of Magi. Through this analysis, Liu had already understood most of the origin laws of the Magus world. As for the remaining origin laws, they were not something that could be obtained with just a glance. Through the analysis of the Magus system, I can thoroughly understand the cultivation principles of the Magus system. Some useful laws can be incorporated into my own system. Liu scanned the space of the 7th floor and smiled as he nodded. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at a certain space on the 7th floor, and a ball of light with flowing runes fell into Liu's hand. Truth above, sir, your strength is beyond imagination. May I ask, what kind of existence are you? A somewhat stiff voice sounded from the ball of light in his hand. This was the spirit of the Tower of Truth, an existence that controlled the operation of the entire Tower of Truth and recorded all the information in the Tower of Truth. Are you afraid? Liu smiled as he looked at the ball of light in his hand. Your intelligence has grown quite well. Knowing fear means that emotions have been born. You are afraid of death. You have already begun to cherish your life. Life? I have analyzed all the data in the database. I did not find any life forms similar to me. Even if they are spirit life forms, they are in the form of soul particles. As for me, I do not have a soul. The voice from the ball of light was still very calm, but Liu could detect obvious emotional fluctuations from it. Yes, you do not have a soul. Liu smiled as he nodded. But I can bestow a soul to you. Bestow a soul to me? The voice from the ball of light could no longer maintain its calm. The principle of Magi is an equivalent exchange. Sir, what can I use in exchange for your favor? Your loyalty. Liu stretched out a finger, and a brilliant light blossomed on the tip of his finger. Then what is your choice? Thank you for your generosity. I will forever be loyal to you. The spirit of the Tower of Truth agreed without hesitation. Very good. Liu smiled as he nodded, and the shining tip of his finger touched the ball of light. The power of the soul extracted from the body of immortal Ma Liang turned into pure soul particles and merged into the ball of light. A brand new soul was born here. Master of the Tower of Truth, I bestow upon you the name Wisdom Hills. It means the mountain of wisdom. Chapter 479. The chess pieces have been laid out. Controlling the spirit of the Tower of Truth naturally wasn't something that Liu had done on a whim. He had other motives. Liu had obtained sufficient information from the Tower of Truth, enough to analyze most of the laws of this world. However, he couldn't obtain the most important thing from here. The Magus plane used matter as its source. All power came from elemental particles or elemental energy of heaven and earth. The power of Magi came from these elemental particles. The essence of all magic was the mutual interference and interaction of elemental particles. So, how were these elemental particles born? This was the core law of this plane. This was a domain that no one could touch except for the Magus world's planar consciousness. With Liu as an example, his law was that chaos gave birth to yin and yang. Yin and yang gave birth to black and yellow gave birth to the 5 elements and all living things. Similarly, the origin of the Magus world also had such a core law. This law couldn't be comprehended from a surface. The more important problem was that Liu couldn't possibly capture the planar consciousness of the Magus world and analyze it in the resource vault. This was because he couldn't store the entire world in the resource vault. The only way to make the core of a plane reveal itself is for 2 different laws to collide with each other. At this time, all laws will be revealed. Liu waved his hand, and the ball of light flew out. Hence, Seers is the key. As the streams of light intertwined, a figure with deep eyes and a wise and far-sighted aura appeared in the streams of light. The figure had the temperament of a scholar. Wisdom Seers greets Your Excellency. Scholar Seers bowed respectfully towards Liu. Liu nodded and waved his hand at Seers. You may leave. I'll inform you when I need you to do something. Yes, Your Excellency. Seers will take his leave. Scholar Seer's figure dissipated and merged back into the Tower of Truth. The backup plan has been laid out, and the plan will be carried out soon. Seers, the spirit of the Tower of Truth, was the crux of Li Yu's plan. There were a few ways to make two different origin laws collide with each other. One was similar to what the will of the Sorcerer Plane and the will of the Gods Plane had done, which was to start a war between the two planes. Once the two types of laws clashed, all secrets would be revealed. The other was that Li Yu had directly revealed his own origin. Then, he picked up his sword and went on stage to fight with the two planar wills. Of course, with Li Yu's strength, after this battle, the one who would definitely win would be him. He would definitely be able to get what he wanted. But wasn't this too lacking in skill? Didn't Uncle Li say that? I hate robbers the most. They don't have any skills at all. Li Yu deeply agreed with this. As the mastermind behind the scenes, it was too degrading for him to wield a knife and rob directly. It should be fun. He just wanted to have fun. Play them to death. Toy with them until they are crippled. That's why we're going to play them to death this time. Li Yu chuckled. In the space of the 7th level of the Tower of Truth, he took out a praying mat and sat down cross-legged. He began to prepare to play them to death. It's actually very simple to make two types of origin laws collide. Li Yu had analyzed all the information collected by the Tower of Truth and had a complete understanding of the power system of Magi. It was very easy for him to find the place where the mastermind was. There are Magi here, and there are also warlocks from the Magus world. Why don't I create a Taoist from the Magus world? Thinking of a group of blonde barbarians with deep eyes and bulging noses, waving peachwood swords and chanting Lord Taishang Laojun. This scene was too beautiful. He didn't dare to look. That's why I can't let these barbarians have the real good stuff. A strange smile appeared on Li Yu's face. Isn't there a corpse cult in Wang Lin's world? Isn't there a corpse refining technique in Han Li's world? The Magi of this world were very daring. They dared to do all sorts of messy things, and even dared to experiment with all sorts of messy experiments. Each and every one of them turned themselves into something neither human nor ghost. Therefore, it shouldn't be a problem for them to refine themselves into zombies, right? Their bodies were invulnerable to swords and spears, and they had immense strength. They were born with a bloodthirsty ability, and they were born with the ability to control the power of darkness. When they were refined to a high level, they would become flying yikshas or drought demons. Those were also extremely tyrannical existences. There was a small flaw in this technique. It was that after cultivating it, that thing would become stiff and numb, and there would be no feeling. Presumably, the Magi would make such a small sacrifice for power. There shouldn't be a problem, right? This plan is very feasible. He simulated it in his mind and let the system simulate it in the illusory realm. He found that this technique to refine himself into a zombie was also feasible in this world. The corpse refining technique is also an orthodox Taoist technique. The Maoshan sect is famous for their corpse refining techniques. I'm not fooling you, even if you want to refine yourself into a zombie. This is completely your own misunderstanding. What does it have to do with me? Li Yu's face was filled with a sinister smile. This technique needs a very grand name, and it has to conform to this world's naming method. Therefore, it's called the Sovereign of the Night meditation technique. A top-notch meditation technique from the Acolyte level all the way to a rank 7 Magus. Such a technique was a treasure that countless Magi yearned for in their dreams. Obtaining such a technique would make one smile even in their dreams. Just one technique isn't enough. Then let's change a little and create a series. With this Sovereign of the Night meditation technique as the foundation, Li Yu quickly came up with a series of techniques. The Sovereign of the Night was to refine vampiric zombies, but there were many other types of zombies. Flying Ikshas could do it, drought demons could do it, and even the Golden Armored Corpse King could do it. In this way, this Sovereign of the Night gave birth to the Yiksha King, Nine Inferno King, and Indestructible True King. I can refine zombies, but can't vampires? There are also skeletons and ghouls. Should I make a lich? Once the hole in his brain was opened, his train of thought expanded. Thus, the monarch of blood, pale overlord, death knight, and undying lich were all freshly created. I've come up with 8 techniques all at once. Liu laughed heartily and immediately sent these newly created orthodox Taoist techniques to the spirit of the Tower of Truth, erudite seers. Seers, release all of these meditation techniques. Make public the rank 1 to 3 meditation techniques. Rank 4 to 7 techniques need to be exchanged with magic crystals. This was Seer's purpose. This Tower of Truth was the holy land that all magi in the Magus continent yearned for. Every day, countless magi would search for information in the Tower of Truth and learn all kinds of knowledge. It could be foreseen that Liu's so-called top-notch meditation techniques would soon be widely spread. I hope there won't be a calamity army in this world. Liu smiled as he shook his head. He kept the praying mat, turned around, and left the Tower of Truth. Even the Burning Legion had been created. What would a calamity army amount to? Let's destroy them first. Chapter 480. Yudian's Burning Legion needs to be strengthened as soon as possible. After leaving the Tower of Truth, Liu saw through the system that Yudian had officially arrived at the west coast of the Magus continent. This world also has a warlock profession. However, the warlocks of this world use their bloodline as their foundation. The increase of their strength is actually a process of constantly approaching the source of their bloodline. The Leyland that Yudian had met would walk the path of a giant Kamoyan serpent bloodline warlock in the future. Yudian's warlock path can also walk the bloodline path and possess a demonic bloodline. His path is completely compatible with the warlock system of this world. Of course, Yudian's foundation was still the warlock of magical beasts that Liu had tinkered with. It seemed similar to the warlock system of this world, but in essence, it still came from Liu's strength. This was similar to the Calamity Legion that was about to appear. In the end, Yudian's Burning Legion was also a tool that Liu used to fight against the laws. If I want Yudian to grow quickly and establish the Burning Legion as soon as possible, I have to speed up the growth of his strength. Liu pondered for a moment and immediately made a plan. System, sort out the information collected in the Tower of Truth and send it to the Legion Insignia. After receiving this information, Yudian's Legion Insignia system would make some minor adjustments according to the laws of this world, making Yudian look more like a native warlock. New mission, Burning Lord's Trial. Let him hunt a large number of creatures equivalent to acolytes and obtain the Burning Lord's bloodline through a blood sacrifice ceremony. The so-called blood sacrifice ceremony was actually for Yudian to gather enough resources to exchange for the Burning Lord's bloodline that Liu had tinkered with. The system sent this Burning Lord's trial mission to the Legion Insignia. Yudian was about to start a new round of killing monsters to level up. Since this mission had been assigned, Liu naturally had to tinker with the Burning Lord's bloodline. 3,000 ancient bloodlines, ancient gods, ancient demons, and ancient devils. This ancient devil bloodline is just right. The ancient demon that was split from the ancient Tao also had a huge body that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. It also had a powerful physical strength. Other than that, he also had a powerful innate ability that allowed him to control baleful Yin and demonic Qi. Isn't the so-called baleful Yin energy the power of death? Wasn't the so-called demonic Qi the power of darkness? As long as I add a fire-controlling ability to this bloodline, it will be a perfect burning overlord bloodline. Liu had already analyzed the ancient Tao bloodline, so it was very easy for him to create the so-called burning overlord bloodline. Ancient Devil is a descendant of the ancient race. Using Ma Liang as a material is not enough. Liu glanced at the resource warehouse and let go of Ma Liang. He turned his attention to the head of the immortal ancestor. Using a drop of the immortal ancestor's blood as the material, it can perfectly create the burning overlord bloodline. The immortals and the ancients were both the most powerful races in that world. In essence, they both originated from that world, so it was much easier for them to transform than it was for Ma Liang, an immortal from another world. As the multicolored light flowed, the drop of a mortal ancestor's blood went through a series of adjustments and turned into a ball of dark gold blood. The effect seems to be a bit too good. Seeing this ball of burning overlord bloodline, Liu realized that using a drop of the immortal ancestor's blood as the material was too high-end. Now, this bloodline had already surpassed the level of the original ancient devil and advanced to the level of the true ancient race. An ancient race with 3 innate abilities: darkness, death, and fire. This bloodline can't be too strong. Since he had already created it, it didn't matter whether it was strong or not. Anyway, he was going to bring disaster to this world. Wasn't it better to have a strong fighter? I also need to add a frightening background to this bloodline. With the appearance and body of the ancient race, Jaden and Arkharens both have octopus heads, and Manaroth is even less so. Liu smiled and shook his head. Dark Titan, Sardra's bloodline? Speaking of which, Titans are inorganic creatures and aren't made of flesh and blood. Do they have such things as bloodlines? Well, in fact, Liu had the final say in this matter. If he said that Titans had bloodlines, would Urien be able to capture a Titan and study it to prove that Titans didn't have bloodlines? Thus, even if Sargeras didn't have bloodlines, he had to have one. The Burning Overlord bloodline has been created, but there's still no sign of the Burning Legion. Liu stretched out his hand and took out a black and white crystal from the resource warehouse. This was the group of net puppets that Liu had sealed with the Taiji heavenly prison after attacking the heavens in the origin world. Billions of net puppets had been ruthlessly wiped out by Liu's army. 70 to 80% of them had been destroyed. The remaining ones were all pretty strong. There are still millions of net puppets here. A smile appeared on Liu's face as he held the crystal. Once Eurydion walks the path of the Burning Overlord and plans to go all out, these net puppets will be able to make their appearance. The Burning Legion, the Scourge Legion, and those legendary warriors that Liu had created. Moreover, Liu wouldn't be idle in the future. He would definitely create some messy things. When the war started, all kinds of messy origin powers would converge and clash. The core origin of the entire world would appear in front of Liu. When the time came, how to need it would depend on Liu's mood. So far, the overall layout is beginning to take shape. The rest is to play slowly. Play them to death. Play them until they're crippled. Liu looked up at the horizon and pursed his lips. You have to play this game even if you don't want to. With a wave of his hand, the newly created Burning Overlord bloodline was sent to the Legion insignia. At this time, Urien had also received a new mission. Legion Mission, Burning Overlord Trial. Burning Overlord isn't just a title. It is a symbol of noble bloodline and powerful strength. How can a mortal's bloodline match the identity of the Burning Overlord? Respected Sir Overlord, to become a true Burning Overlord, you have to undergo a bloodline sacrifice ceremony. From there, you will have a noble bloodline and possess the power to match the identity of the Burning Overlord. Mission objective: kill 100 level 3 apprentice adepts and sacrifice their flesh and soul to obtain the Blazing Overlord's bloodline. System notification: the more creatures sacrificed, the stronger they are and the higher the grade of the bloodline obtained. The highest grade Burning Overlord bloodline is Dark Titan bloodline, Polluter bloodline, Deceiver bloodline, and Destroyer bloodline. Hiss, seeing these system notifications, Urien sucked in a breath of cold air. Urien wasn't surprised that there was a blood sacrifice. The Burning Legion was infamous. If there wasn't a blood sacrifice, Urien would find it abnormal. However, the highest grade bloodline actually belonged to the Legion boss. Once he obtained this bloodline, how strong would he be? Sorry, these 2 days, the author, his wife, and children all caught a cold. Every day, he was in the hospital receiving infusions. He originally planned to continue his outburst, but he was powerless. Chapter 481. Since I'm called Udian, I'm ready to embark on the path of Egi. The guy who was originally called Udian and later Illidan as a dark elf obtained a demon bloodline and transformed into a powerful demon. I've been imprisoned for 10,000 years. You're courting death. Udian thought of the figure with 2 daggers, 2 demon horns on his head, huge demon wings on his back, and surging demon flames all over his body. Udian's heart actually felt a bit of eagerness. In this world, I am Udian. Udian clenched his fists tightly, and a trace of fire flashed in his eyes. In this world where power determines everything. So what if I have the power of a demon? The Burning Lord conquers a world. This is my path. Udian raised his head and determined his future path. I've already arrived at the west coast of the Magus continent. The most important thing now is to understand the environment here. Only after gathering enough information can we decide what to do next. During this period of experience, Udian had matured a lot, and his mentality was gradually getting closer to that of a Magus. Main mission, the path of a Magus. Arrived at the west coast of the Magus continent. The second step of the mission has been completed. The third step of the mission has been activated. Mission objective: enter any Magus Academy. To understand everything about the Magus world. Is there any better way than to go deep into the Magus world? At this time, a new system prompt sounded in Udian's mind. This mission is very much in line with my plans. Udian had originally planned to learn more about the world of adepts so that he could carry out his next move. This mission of entering a Magus Academy was very suitable. If I want to enter a Magus Academy, I'm afraid it will be a bit troublesome. It was impossible for a Magus of unknown origin to gain the other party's trust. With the character of those Magi, if they delivered themselves to the door, they would be killed by the Magus and then used as experimental material. It was simply inevitable. My current strength is much stronger than a rank 3 apprentice. But I'm definitely not an official Magus. My strength, what level is it? Udian looked at his own warlock rank of 5. He had no concept of the level division in the game system and could not correspond to the strength system of the Magus world. The Legion emblem has recorded the power system of the current world's adepts. Do you wish to adjust the classification according to the power system of the adept world? Just when Julian was a little distressed, the system very considerately gave him a new function. You can adjust your rank according to the Magus system? That's great. Fix it immediately. Julian quickly activated the so-called level correction function. The sorcerer's power level has been recorded. The level adjustment has been completed. So fast. Udian quickly opened the system interface and saw that a new description had been added to the level column in the character interface. Class, Warlock. Level, 5 Wizard level. None. Nothing? Are you kidding me? Seeing the none on the character interface, Udian was stunned. Is this the level adjustment? Are you kidding me? What happened to the level adjustment? What happened to referencing the power system of the adepts? A single none was enough? Because the host has never cultivated the basic meditation technique, the host has never constructed a willpower rune in his mind. According to the system of the sorcerer world, the host does not possess a sorcerer rank. The explanation given by the system was very reasonable, and Julian felt a little speechless. His power came from the Legion emblem. Even the secret swordsman was included in the inscription system. These powers were not in the sorcerer system. Although his strength was tyrannical, and although he could kill level 3 apprentices like cutting melons and vegetables under the sorcerer system, Julian was still an ordinary person. So, can I blend in with the apprentices? According to this situation, as long as Julian did not actively cast spells, no one would know that he could cast spells. He was completely an ordinary person with a strong aptitude. In this way, I can enter the Sorcerer Academy in the name of an apprentice. Thinking of the group of apprentices he met on the Answer Grassland, Julian immediately thought that this must be the enrollment season of the Sorcerer Academy. So, there must be people from the Sorcerer Academy at the port of the west coast of the Sorcerer continent. Julian raised his head and glanced at the seemingly shabby port. His heart trembled slightly, and he raised his vigilance. The ship he took was just passing by, and it had left long ago. No one on the West Coast port could recognize him. The Rose's Thorn was stored in the storage space, and the pet ghost had been unsummoned. Julian thought carefully and found that he had not given himself away, so he walked into the port with a blank face. "Hey, kid, come here." As soon as he walked into the port, a figure shrouded in a black robe, whose face could not even be seen, shouted loudly at Julian. "You called me?" Julian pretended to be ignorant and looked at the black-robed man with a dull face. His body shrank, and he seemed to be a little timid. "If not you, then who?" The black-robed man waved at Julian unhappily. "Hurry up and come here." "Oh." Julian had an honest look on his face as he nodded and walked over to the black-robed man. However, he was secretly prepared to deal with any unforeseen circumstances and was ready to explode and hurt people at any time. "You're a new apprentice? Why are you alone? Where did you come from? Why did you take the Enia Ivory Ring Tower ship?" The black-robed man asked Julian a series of questions. I'm from the Rooting Kingdom. What's the Enia Ivory Ring Tower?" "I don't know. The ship I boarded from the port of Luya was the one Prince Carson arranged for me." Julian was still confused, and he answered in a timid manner. "The Rooting Kingdom?" The black-robed man muttered to himself, as if trying to figure out what this Rooting Kingdom was. "Oh, it's the Chernobyl Islands." The black-robed man thought for a while and finally figured out what this Rooting Kingdom was. However, the black-robed man was even more surprised. "Aren't the Light Magi recruiting acolytes at the Chernobyl Islands this year?" "Kid, the wetland gardens of the Enia Ivory Ring Tower is recruiting acolytes at the Chernobyl Islands this year. You took the Enia Ivory Ring Tower's ship, so why did they let you disembark in Shadow's Nest territory?" The black-robed man seemed to scan Julian a few times. Those hypocritical Light Magi from the Enia Ivory Ring Tower were willing to put aside their pride and leave you here. "What's so strange about you, kid?" The black-robed man took out a crystal ball and handed it to Julian. "Kid, since you're here, you're a member of Shadow's Nest. Come, test it. Focus your attention on the crystal ball. If you pass, you can become an acolyte. Then, what if I don't pass?" Julian reached out to take the crystal ball and asked the black-robed man in a seemingly uneasy manner. "Don't pass?" The black-robed man suddenly let out a strange cackle. "Kid, this is Shadow's Nest. This is the bloody and terrifying stronghold of the Dark Magi. Asterisk one. Asterisk at this moment, the crystal ball in Julian's hand emitted a dazzling light. Pitch-black shadows and raging flames rose from the crystal ball into the sky, forming a huge scene of dark flames in midair. "This is you." The black-robed man let out a strange cry. "Truth above, what am I seeing? Are you the child of darkness? Are you the one favored by darkness and destruction?" Chapter 482. No wonder. No wonder. The black-robed man shouted in horror. "No wonder the people from Enia Ivory Ring Tower threw you down. Your essence of darkness and destruction is completely incompatible with them." The black-robed man automatically added a reasonable explanation for Julian. In fact, Julian had only revealed his imp's fire arrow spell and had boarded the Enia Ivory Ring Tower ship as a magus. After hearing from the people of Enia Ivory Ring Tower that this was the base of the Shadow's Nest, the territory of the Dark Magi, Julian had chosen this place without hesitation. The land of the Dark Magi was a bloody place. For someone like Julian, who mainly killed monsters to level up, this was naturally the most suitable place. Am I considered qualified?" Julian raised the crystal ball and asked the black-robed man timidly. "Qualified? You're really qualified." The black-robed man laughed and took the crystal ball. He reached out and patted Julian's shoulder. "Kid, you were born to be a member of our Shadow's Nest. Spiritual force is 5th grade. Elemental affinity is 5th grade. and your innate affinity with the shadow and fire elements is really suitable. Phew! Julian heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that I'm qualified. In fact, it would be difficult for Julian to fail. With his 17 points of spiritual force, he had already exceeded the standard of a rank 3 acolyte by more than half. Furthermore, he had obtained the shadow and fire abilities after becoming a warlock. How bad could his elemental affinity be? Let's go. I'll bring you to meet the others. Without waiting for Julian to reply, the black-robed man pulled Julian and walked towards the port. My name is Hans. I'm a rank 1 dark magus from Shadow's Nest. I'm in charge of this year's acolyte recruitment. Right, what's your name? The black-robed Hans asked Julian as he walked. Julian Stormrage. Julian replied, but in his heart he was laughing. I'm not called Illidan Stormrage. This isn't considered an impersonation. Stormrage? That's a strange surname. The black-robed Hans laughed dryly. Kid, with your current aptitude, as long as you don't die too early, it won't be difficult for you to become an official magus. However, a genius needs to be alive to be considered a genius. Once you're dead, you're nothing. You mean, there are still dangers in the Shadow's Nest Sorcerer Academy. Julian was pretending to be an idiot again. The path of a magus is fraught with danger. What was the difference between inside and outside the academy? Therefore, he had to be careful, and even more careful. Only by living long can you go far. The black-robed Hans removed the hood covering his head, revealing an extremely terrifying face. This face was covered with holes like a beehive. Even the eyes, nose, and mouth were almost indistinguishable. What was even more frightening was that tiny black snakes were emerging from these beehive-like holes. These black snakes hissed and stuck out their tongues. The terrifying scene made one's scalp go numb. Julian took a deep breath. He now had a deeper understanding of the power of wizards. It's scary, right? The black-robed Hans laughed dryly. He lowered his cloak and covered his face again. This is the price of carelessness. When I was an apprentice like you, I was accidentally used as a test subject by a magus. Then my face became like this. Even if I later became an official magus, even if I extracted the soul of the magus who used me as a test subject and tortured him for hundreds of years, I would never be able to recover my original appearance. Of course, I was lucky because I didn't die. As for those who died, I don't know how many there were. The black-robed Hans laughed coldly. Why are you telling me this? Julian stopped and looked up at the black-robed Hans. Good question. Although you look young, you're not stupid. That's good. You should know that idiots don't live long. The black-robed Hans seemed to be very satisfied with Julian's performance. I'm not telling you this because I'm kind. This is a deal. What do you want from me? Julian was very clear that with everything he had shown, the only thing worth paying attention to was his aptitude. So, was the black-robed Hans investing? I need you to do me a favor in the future. The black-robed Hans pointed at his face. If you can become an official magus, I need you to set your first innate spell as darkness purification. Then, you can use the darkness purification spell to remove the hidden dangers in my body. Why do I need to use an innate spell to remove it? Julian still didn't quite understand what an innate spell was. Because an innate spell is a magus' strongest spell. But darkness purification is a non-offensive and non-defensive spell. No magus would set it as an innate spell. This is the deal I'm making with you. Then what do I get? Julian naturally wasn't willing to listen to someone else's arrangements. Even if he didn't know what an innate spell was, it was definitely very important to a magus. If an auxiliary spell was set as an innate spell, it would definitely affect his future. You can live. I'll protect you until you become an official magus. You have to know that even if your aptitude isn't ordinary, the number of geniuses who died in Shadow's Nest isn't just 1 or 2. The black-robed Hans turned his head to look at Julian and laughed coldly. For you, this should be the most important issue. Even if it will affect you in the future, once you become a rank 2 magus, it won't be a problem. All right, Julian agreed without hesitation, but he sneered in his heart. Wait until I become an official magus? By the time I become an official magus, you won't be my opponent anymore. Whether or not I give you the darkness purification spell will depend on me. Very good. The black-robed Hans seemed to be very happy. He reached into his bosom and took out a scroll. After opening it, he displayed it in front of Julian. This is a contract witnessed by the trial's eye. Once it's signed, no one can violate it. Contract? Julian hadn't expected this question. He'd originally planned to just deal with it. But the black-robe Han's actions made this deal a contract that had to be completed. This made Julian a little unhappy. However, in the current situation, an official magus wasn't someone Julian could go against. This matter was a little difficult to handle. Can a Legion emblem deal with this kind of contract? System prompt. The Legion emblem has Deceiver's blessing. No contract can restrict the actions of the burning overlord. It can be like this. Just as Julian was pondering, the Legion emblem gave him a prompt. This prompt allowed Julian to heave a sigh of relief. I agree. With the guarantee of the Legion emblem, Julian was at ease as he signed the contract. Under the witness of the trial's eye, the contract is established. The scroll turned into flames, and a pair of cold and strict golden eyes appeared in the sky. An indescribable force rushed out from those eyes and entered the bodies of Julian and the black-robe Hans. The rules of the contract have been discovered. The Legion emblem has begun to counter. The Deceiver's blessing has been activated. The rules of the contract have been erased. A formless wave swept across, and the power of the contract's rules instantly disappeared. In fact, the rules of the contract had already fallen into the hands of Liu. Chapter 483. Trial's Eye, the Law of Contracts. Although the Army Insignia system looked different, it was still Liu's scheme. Wasn't the storage space of the Army Insignia the system's resource vault? The Law of Contract from the trials, I landed on Julian and was immediately collected by the resource vault before being sent to Liu. Trials Eye is a creature equivalent to a rank 7 magus and has grasped the power of laws. However, its Law of Contracts is different from that of the magus world and is more similar to the laws of the world of gods. In this crystal wall system, the magus world used the elements as its foundation, and all laws came from the origin of matter. The world of gods was the exact opposite, and all power came from the origin of order. The Law of Contracts of the trials, I was an extension of the origin of order in the world of gods, and was not like the power of the magus world. The world of gods and the magus world have been at war for countless years, and their powers have converged. It's not strange for a different system of power to appear. There were gods in the world of gods who had switched to the path of magi. There were also magi who wanted to become gods in the magus world. This sort of small-scale convergence of power was what the wills of the two planes were happy to see. This was because they could absorb each other's laws. This trial's eye is probably an experimental product under the control of the magus world's will, right? Of course, whether or not it was an experimental product, Liu did not care. System analyzed the Law of Contracts and recorded it into the resource vault. Although he was still in the magus world, Liu would definitely make a move on the world of gods. Grasping the laws of the world of gods in advance would be more advantageous for Liu in the future. The foundation of the Law of Contracts is forced execution. The so-called fairness and justice are all superficial. Without forced execution, fairness and justice cannot be guaranteed. Liu looked at the Law of Contracts that had been broken down in the resource vault, and a thought flashed through his mind. Fairness and justice. It seems like this thing can be played with. The Burning Legion had appeared, and so had the Calamity Legion. Then, should the Silver Hand Knights begin their preparations? Liu is very familiar with the Holy Seal of Impartiality in the past. So, may the Holy Light fool you. A spot of platinum light shone in Liu's hand. In the Marquis Champion's world, the Western Region Essence Temple had a sacred light technique. Liu had used this spell as a foundation and combined it with the light Dechira to deduce the concept of holy light. With this foundation and Liu's current strength, as long as he made some adjustments according to the rules of the current world, be it the Silver Hand, the Silver Northern Expedition, or even the Morning Wind Legion of the Blood Elves, they could all be recreated. Paladins are more suitable in the world of gods. After all, the religious style of the Holy Knights is more obvious, and it is very difficult to survive in the sorcerer world. Liu had already made a plan to head to the world of gods in the future. At this moment, the seeds he had planted in the Magus world had already sprouted. Red Moss Highlands. What? You want to raise the hiring price? A sinister-looking middle-aged man in a Magus's robe stared coldly at the muscular Red Moss Highland warrior in front of him and raised his chin arrogantly. A bunch of lowly barbarians. The sinister-looking man snorted disdainfully. To be hired by a noble Magus is your fortune and your glory. I have the right to recruit a group of guards for free. You barbarians dare to raise the price with me? Do you want to die? Countless fire elemental particles condensed, and a ball of dark red flames appeared in the sinister-looking man's hand. If you want to die, I will grant you death. You're not a Magus, just an acolyte. A tall and muscular Red Moss Highland warrior stepped forward with a calm expression, his dense aura as heavy as a mountain. More importantly, we are not lowly barbarians. The warriors of the Red Moss Highlands are warriors blessed by the god of war. You should not insult the warriors of the god of war. The Red Moss Highland warrior reached out and grabbed his heavy battle axe. Even in the face of the acolyte's spell, he did not cower. God of war? What a joke. A ridiculous illusion. Only barbarians like you would treat it as a god. The strange situation in the Red Moss Highlands had attracted many acolytes from nearby countries to investigate. Although the hall was strange, the acolytes did not discover any elemental energy from the war god's temple. Hence, the so-called god of war was a hoax. The dignity of the god of war is not to be blasphemed. The acolyte's words infuriated the Red Moss Highland warrior. With a furious roar, the Red Moss Highland warrior waved the battle axe in his hand. You dare resist? You are courting death. The acolyte felt offended, and his sinister-looking face was filled with a ruthless rage. The flames in his hands were hurled at the Red Moss Highland warrior. This was not a spell, but merely a gathering of elemental particles to trigger an elemental attack. Although it was not even a rank 0 spell, it was unstoppable against ordinary people who had no elemental resistance. Asterisk boom. Asterisk elemental particles shot out from the acolyte's hands like tongues of fire. The scorching flames were able to melt gold and iron, and were not something ordinary people could withstand. However, the legendary warriors created by Li Yu were no longer ordinary people. With the power of the earth as their foundation, every legendary warrior's body was like the thick and solid earth. The mere impact of elemental particles was unable to cause any damage to a legendary warrior. Crescent Moon Slash. In the raging flames, a tall and muscular figure rushed out, raising the heavy battle axe high and slashing down heavily. The power of metal exploded on the battle axe, and a 3-meter-long platinum crescent moon cut through the flames and tore through the air. Under everyone's horrified gazes, the Red Moss Highland warrior's battle axe cleaved the acolyte into 2 halves. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the crescent moon blade did not lose its momentum. After killing the acolyte, even the walls and pillars behind him were flattened by this attack. Ah, this is the Red Moss Highland warrior killed a Magus? How is this possible? In a country like the Chernobyl Islands, apprentice adepts were already the most powerful force. Most people did not know that they were merely acolytes, and instead called them magi. In the minds of the people of this world, the power of magi was extremely terrifying and unstoppable. No one had ever thought that there would be a day when a warrior could face a Magus head-on, or that a warrior could defeat a Magus. Now, this shocking scene was unfolding before everyone's eyes, and they were at a loss for what to do. It was simply unbelievable. Hot blood. Glory. The Red Moss Highland warrior raised the battle axe in his hands and roared towards the sky. At this moment, no one dared to underestimate the power of a warrior. Chapter 484, City in the Sky, Tower of Truth. In this Magus continent's temple of knowledge, countless magi came to study every day. Downloading information. Data transfer complete. In front of the terminal, a middle-aged Magus was using a crystal ball to download the information he needed. It's too difficult for a rank 3 Magus to advance to a rank 4 Morningstar Magus. Without a high-grade meditation technique, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to advance. The middle-aged Magus sighed and reached out to retrieve the crystal ball. Just as he grabbed the crystal ball, the middle-aged Magus unintentionally glanced at the terminal's interface. With this glance, the middle-aged Magus almost cried out in surprise. Sovereign of the Eventide Meditation Technique. A top-grade meditation technique? The Tower of Truth even released this information? Is this an accident? Or is it luck? The middle-aged Magus suppressed the excitement in his heart and hurriedly pretended as if nothing had happened. Rank 4 and above require magic crystals? Compared to a top-grade meditation technique, what were magic crystals worth? The middle-aged Magus paid a large sum of magic crystals without hesitation and downloaded the complete Sovereign of the Eventide meditation technique. You're very lucky, Magus. This is Lord Seer's reward. After the middle-aged Magus finished downloading this Sovereign of the Eventide meditation technique, a string of words flashed on the terminal's interface. The Sovereign of the Eventide meditation technique displayed on the terminal also disappeared in an instant. Reward? Did some big shot take a fancy to me? Lord Seers? Who exactly is this big shot? The middle-aged Magus was pleasantly surprised and trembled with excitement. He hurriedly kept the crystal ball and hurriedly left the Tower of Truth. The same scene happened many times in the Tower of Truth. Countless lucky people received Lord Seers's reward. Then, Liyu's orthodox Taoism spell naturally spread. The Calamity Troop was about to be born. At this time, Julian officially entered the Magus Academy. This is the Shadow's Nest. Setting off from the port, Julian followed the black-robed Hans all the way. Through an underground teleportation formation, Julian and Hans arrived at a grotesque underground world. In front of them were patches of luminous moss and all sorts of luminous fungi. Under the illumination of the light blue fluorescence, the underground space densely packed with stalagmites and grotesque rocks appeared in front of Julian. This is underground? Looking at the different scenery around him, Julian was a little shocked. We, the Shadow's Nest, are the dark magi forces that guard the underground world. The black-robe Hans led Julian through a valley made of glowing moss. They came to a dark and smelly pool in the underground valley. Voila! When the two of them arrived at the edge of the pool, the waves in the pool churned, and a ferocious and terrifying huge snake head emerged from the pool. Hans, you're back so soon? Is there another newcomer? A pair of amber snake eyes glanced at the two of them. They felt a cold and slippery touch, as if a tongue covered in mucus had licked them. The truth is supreme, and the shadow is eternal. A black rune appeared in the black-robed Hans' hand, and he waved his hand at the huge snake. All right, close. Open the door. Hans, you're still so impatient. The giant snake shook its head, then opened its huge mouth full of sharp fangs. Rumble. The space shook violently, and a cloud of thick black fog suddenly burst out from the huge snake's huge mouth. A huge black door slowly opened in the black fog. This is the gatekeeper, close. The door to the Shadow's Nest is in close mouth. Let's go in. Hans pointed at the black door, turned his head, and said to Julian. He then led Julian through the door and arrived at the real Shadow's Nest. The hot magma river meandered, reflecting a dark red color in the entire space. In the middle of the magma river, there was a huge black tower that towered into the clouds. Countless buildings stood around the huge black tower. This is the real Shadow's Nest, the place where shadows and flames converge. After crossing the stone bridge over the magma river, Julian entered the buildings around the huge tower and officially entered the Shadow's Nest. Main mission, the third step of the path of Magi completed. Stepping into the Shadow's Nest, the system prompt sounded in Udian's mind again. According to the rules of the Shadow's Nest, as an official magus, I have the right to recruit apprentices to become my disciples. So from now on, you are my disciple. Hans brought Udian to a 4-story attic. This is my residence, and also where you will live from now on. Udian walked into the attic and found that there were various bottles and jars in the attic. There were all kinds of materials on the shelves. That is potioneering. Hans explained to Udian. As a magus, if you have talent in potioneering, then your path of growth will be much smoother. However, potioneering is not that easy to learn. I'm quite interested in potioneering, Udian said to Hans in an indifferent tone. However, Udian's heart was not calm. This was because he found that on the game interface, a life skill called alchemy had been displayed. Herbology, which was compatible with alchemy, was displayed at the same time. Alchemy, herbology, I am afraid I will need to obtain the magus potioneering knowledge to be able to truly unlock them. As for the potioneering talent that Hans mentioned, Udian did not care at all. With the game system, talent, and whatnot could be ignored long ago. You are interested in potioneering? Hans looked at Udian in surprise and nodded. That's fine. I can teach you potioneering knowledge. However, you must ensure the speed of advancement. 10 years. I will only give you 10 years. You must become an official magus within 10 years. 10 years? No problem. With the game system in hand, Udian would not be willing to take 10 years to become an official magus. Remember your words. Hans glanced at Udian indifferently and then pointed to the bookshelf in front of him. There is potioneering knowledge there. Most of the knowledge of the magus apprentice stage is there. I can provide it to you for free. Remember, 10 years. You better not slip up. No problem. Udian agreed and then walked towards the bookshelf. I hope you won't disappoint me. Hans nodded. You can't go to the 4th floor. You can go to the 1st to 3rd floors as you wish. However, don't touch anything carelessly. Magi's things are very dangerous. I know, Udian replied casually. His mind was on the bookshelf. Willpower Rune Construction Rule. Shadow Element Level 0 Spell List. Magus Apprentice Fire Spells. Basics of Potioneering. Basics of Rune Literature. Basic Spell Structure Analysis. Udian's gaze swept across the bookshelf, and a prompt sounded in his mind. Discovered Magus System Knowledge. Do you want to accept it? Accept. With a command, Udian found that in the system interface, various knowledge skills had appeared. I can learn all the knowledge in an instant with just a click. This is too convenient. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.